Has a low end, a high end, medium end. Yeah. Let me look my
Sonia, contact my father's name was Larry.
Oh, no, it's a recording, that's all.
Yeah, like, because I want to have, I would have options.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, team, welcome back to day 2 of boot camp. We have more people here today than we did on Monday, so that's a good thing. I got another one, that's even better. So welcome back. Today, we're gonna be going deep into Smartplans and the referral network inside of KW Command, and then we'll take a break, and then Jeff will come in and we're gonna start talking contracts again. So kind of similar to what we did on Monday. I wanted to open it up for anybody that has a question on Monday's class, 2 or 3 questions tops I can take right now. Anybody have any questions before we get going into today? Command related, of course. Go ahead.
I wasn't here for that class. Stuff you think
I think you're good. Yeah, based on our conversations, I think you'll be good on that. Anybody that was here that anything that's confusing or just want to me to hit on it real fast from Monday's class?
You go to the archive thing, like if you delete email.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just say, so the question here is, let's say you archived a contact for whatever reason, maybe they unsubscribed and all of a sudden you reconnected with them and you need to unarchive them and bring them back into your database. This is where you go to do that. So you're going to go to settings up top. So you hit your little profile, go down to settings. You're going to go to command settings. You're going to click on contacts and you're going to click on contact archive. This is going to show you anybody that you've ever archived. Don't judge me, I've archived a lot of people.
Because you're just not getting hits from them, or
It could be a million reasons. I could not tell you. I unarchived somebody, unarchived somebody. I looked at these names and I don't remember some of them. I think most of these are probably realtors that just, oh yeah, that's actually what it is. So when realtors unsubscribe from my marketing, I just archive them because they're useless in the,
yeah.
yeah, so that's what it is. So if I wanted to restore Corolla, is that how you name Carola, I would just hit restore and it'll literally pop them right back into your database. That's it. Or I can fully delete them and take them out of my life and leave them right there. All right, so let's get to today's topic. So I'm just going to go back to the home screen just because, again, when we log into command, this is where we are when we log in. Today, we're going to focus on Smartplans. So let's just go over to the Smartplan tab. Now, who think they know what Smartplans is and what it isn't? You guys know what Smartplans are?
So like bi-weekly market analysis, monthly or birthdays, anniversaries. Maria taught us in our onboarding too yesterday, like if you're a mother, put mother as a tag name, so then you can send out Mother's Day card.
Yeah. So look, go ahead, Joe. Yeah, perfect. That's a good segue. So anytime you want to automate touches, whether they're going to be just to remind you to do something, an email to go out on your behalf, a text message to go out, a call to get a reminder to call somebody, whatever type of reminder or anything you want automated, essentially you would go and create a smart plan around it. Now, when I click on smart plan, and same with yours, it's automatically going to go to my smart plans. That's where you're going to see the library of plans that you have activated. Many of you, if you haven't already done this before, you probably have 0 smart plans in your current library. So we're going to pretend right now that I have 0. Right now, I clearly have 18 smart plans in there. But we're going to pretend I have 0 smart plans and I'm just starting out. And there's a couple smart plans that I would say you guys should all start utilizing like ASAP. There's one that's called the monthly nurture. I'm going to show you guys where to find that here in a moment. So the monthly nurture, that's 1 email per month. And I showed you guys last week on Monday. Remember when I showed you the neighborhood reports that go out to the customer? That's what triggers that. Is this smart plan? It's called monthly neighborhood nurture. So insert neighborhood nurture right here in the middle. You can either set up to go once a month or twice a month. So I'm going to show you those 2 plans here in a second. The other smart plan that I would activate pretty much right away is also the birthday smart plan. I'll show you guys how to do that as well. The other one that I would recommend you guys set up right away as well is the anniversary smart plan. This is specifically the home anniversary smart plan. Then, this is not going to be a smart plan, this next thing, but this is what I would then do on top of the monthly nurture is set up a newsletter. I don't have a class specific to newsletters, but I do have a class I've already taught on it, meaning I'm not covering in boot camp, but I already have a recording. It's like an hour and a half long. It's on our KW Naples and Marco Facebook page if you just look it up. There's one where I specifically cover how to use command to build that newsletter. So these are some of the basic plans I would automate from day one. So remember last week when we talked about, well, you know, do we do this all at one time and then we start lead generating? No, as you're making your contacts, start to activate some of these plans. If you don't have birthdays, you don't have home anniversaries, that's pretty easy to find. Go ahead, Joe.
Is the newsletter similar to the market leader we used to have?
That's what, no, it's an old platform that he's referring to. The newsletter is something you're going to create. We have a whole playbook as well on how to do that. Go ahead.
Could you remind me, last time you said a website where we go?
TruePeopleSearch.com, great site to find out information about where people live and possibly, well, you can get their birthdays on there as well. For starters, again, start with these are the smart plans that I would consider. It's the first three. This is technically not a smart plan. I was just throwing that out there. So these are the three smart plans to start out with. I'm going to show you guys where all those exist. What I want to also mention is this. So before, if you're like, for example, let's say some of you decide, hey, I want to do Facebook ads. Well, when you do Facebook ad, we can actually implement a smart plan so that they're getting communicated automatically the moment the lead comes in. I'm bringing this up because here's what I'm going to show you. In the library, before you go create, because you can either get a smart plan by going into the library and finding a smart plan that already exists out there, and they're usually either provided by the company or they're provided by other realtors. So let's say an agent has a smart plan that's working for them, they'll usually publish it to the public, which I believe actually, let me see how, for example, these are my 18 smart plans that you guys see here. If I wanted to publish one of these to the general public, all of KW agents, I can hit these dots and I can hit publish to library. That allows you now to go find the smart plan and actually implement it in your world. The point is this, you can either create a smart plan from scratch, which we will do that today as well, so you can see how that works, or go to the library. Somebody might already have a smart plan that you can adopt and just make some changes to. So I'm going to show you that as well. So let's first find these smart plans, because right now most of you don't have anything on that first page or on my smart plan. So we're going to go to the library next. And here, a couple ways for you to search. You can either use filters here. You can either search by a name. So like, let's say, for example, I wanted to do a Facebook one. If I wanted to do a Facebook ad, I can search Facebook and I can find 764 smart plans that are in here related to Facebook. Now they're different things. So I have to go into each one and explore what it is. So for example, this one right here says it's a Facebook paid ad lead follow-up. So this smart plan is centered around a reduced home price on Facebook paid ad. Well, I want to see, well, it's been downloaded a lot. It's been downloaded 3,500 times, got a good score. This smart plan has 13 steps in it. It'll run for 9 days, and there's 7 touches actually in this particular smart plan over 9 days. So that's pretty good. That's pretty aggressive. And if I want to see what the touches are, I can click view steps. And I can see that in this smart plan on day one, they're getting a text message. And this is the text message you're going to adopt, but then you'll be able to modify. And I'll show you that here in a second. Then you have a 1 day delay, and then there's an automated email. And that email looks to be already set up. Yep, it's already set up, that email. Then there's a 1 day delay, and then there's a phone call reminder for you to call them. It says paste link to script below if you want it. On 2 days later, there's a text message happening again. So again, automation, and you can see with somebody's smart plan that already is in the library, you can see all the steps and you can decide, you know what, I like that smart plan, I want to use it. I can hit add to smart plan. And now let me name this test so I don't get all messed up in my list. Smart plan. So I'm just going to name it test for right now so I know what it is. I'm gonna hit download, and now that's gonna populate over here in my smart plan library. There it is. So let's just say I want to modify and work on this plan. I can now go to edit on the right hand side. And what I like to do, just because I'm weird, I like to condense them all down. So I do this little arrow just so I can get a high level overview of what the plan is, and then I go one by one and start working it. So in this smart plan, just get all these down. Okay, perfect. So there's the start of the smart plan. It starts with a text message, then there's a 1-day delay. So let's see if I want to make some changes. So let's see what the text message is. And by the way, Twilio does need to be set up on your account. Twilio does need to be set up. That'll be later on, but Twilio does need to be set up. So notice how for me it says your Twilio account is connected, so I can use the smart plan right now if I choose to. So there's the message. Now, of course, I'm not, this just says insert link here. I probably need to modify that and insert whatever link, or let's just say, you know what, I don't like this message at all. I just want to start from scratch, but maybe I like the Aloha start. It's going to delete it all.
So Twilio needs to be set up for any smart
And
plan.
as if there's going to be a text message with that smart plan. So if I just want to start this from scratch, I can start this from scratch. Now I can say hello. Maybe the first touch is hello and then the person's name. Now in a smart plan, you don't want to physically insert a name because remember, this is going to go to a bunch of people. So I would say hello, and then I would use this little box over here on the right-hand side to merge certain fields. So I'm going to say hello, and I want it to say the person's first name. So then I'm going to scroll up, contact. Yeah, no, that's contact last name. There, this is the problem with smaller. There you go. There you go. First name. So I just basically, I'm looking for the contact and then added the first name. So I wanted to say hello, contact first name. So if this goes out 200 times, it's going to go hello and then add that person's actual name. And then whatever I want to add in here, whatever I want to add in the text, maybe I want to throw some emojis in there and then I'll throw that in there. And then maybe I just want to close it out with Jordas, Reyes, whatever, put my name at the bottom and whatever it is. There we go. So let's just say that was the first text message. From here, I want to confirm it. Everything's good. That's the message I want. I'm going to hit save. So I can make sure that message is now saved. And then I'm going to keep building. So I'm going to condense that down. And you know what? I don't want it to be 1 day later for the email. I want the email to go out in 3 days. So I'm just going to switch it 3 days. And I'm going to confirm and save that. So then 3 days later, so on day 4, now there's an email going out. Let me see what that email currently looks like. And here's the body of that email. Just like the text message, I'm going to modify this email and what it looks like. Now, notice here, it says, so this is, you're going to put your email subject and then your body of your email. Now, in this body of this particular email, this is what we call a simple email. You can't add graphics to this, not in a simple email. If you want to get very creative with adding graphics, then you need to actually do what's called the design. You're going to do a design. Now, we're not covering the design tab. That's this tab right here that I'm hovering over. That's a later class. But if you want to do a more customized email, like, let me just pop one up as an example. I can select design and pick any of my emails that I have created, any of my email templates. So this was one I was messing with yesterday, showing somebody how to do a newsletter design. Let's say that's the one I want. Click on it. It's going to let me make some changes to it. I'm good. Save changes. And now instead of being that simple email that was in the plan, I'm actually now doing this design. And I like it. I'm going to hit save. And now I'm going to condense this down and I'm going to keep building. 1 day later, okay, hey, I'm fine with that. So I'm going to leave it for 1 day later. And then it says here, make a call. Okay, I probably don't really want to make much change to this. If there was a particular, this is probably beneficial where you want to add a script, like maybe if you have a team and you want your team to follow a certain script, maybe for them it'd be good. At the end of the day, the key here is that I want a reminder to call these people. So I don't really make changes to that. I just let it be. I just want that reminder. Then there's a delay. Now, let's say, for example, you know what? I want after this 2 day delay, I want the text message. I'm okay with that. But I want to add an email to also happen at the same time. So how could I do that? So I'm kind of building in more to this particular smart plan. On the right-hand side, well, there are options there of what I can add to the smart plan. So I want to add an email to that smart plan. So I just added email, and then it drops all the way down to the bottom. So it's on day 11. So what I have to now do is move that side of the drop down the whole email design, and I want to move it up. So I just moved it up one step. I still need to go up one more step. Perfect. So there's the delay I wanted, and then on day 10, it's a text message and an email going out. Perfect. Is exactly what I wanted to do. Now I just need to make sure, 1 second, Joe, and then I just need to make sure I now either put my subject in, and either it's going to be a simple email, just text, or maybe I've already designed something that I want to insert here. This is where I make the choice. Go ahead, Joe.
When you moved it up, did it change the day 10? Or did you have to?
It does that
I
automatically.
didn't see that.
No, it does it automatically. It's just telling, it's just for you to get a snapshot of what days things are happening. So on day 10, now this person's get a text message and an email, and then again, there's a 1 day delay, and then there's another email there. So let me stop there for a second. There's more I'm going to teach on the screen, but what are the questions on this so far? Go.
So just to put this in context, this specific one would be in relation to like, I paid an ad for a listing and someone got back to me. I would have tagged that contact, like.
So I get you where you're going. So a couple of things. When you go to the library and find a plan, the reason I say start there is because if you have, let's say in this example, I'm doing Facebook ads, I don't want to recreate the whole thing from scratch. So I'll go adopt somebody's plan and just make changes to it.
I like that.
In theory, I could just create this myself, which I'll show you guys here in a second, how simple that really is. But even if it was a Facebook ad plan and I said I wanted to use it for something else, I can, because really all I'm using is the body of like the frequency. Okay, day 1, this happens. 3 days later, this happens. But even then, here's the thing, if I'm going to be modifying it that much, I'm just going to create one from scratch. If I'm going to adopt somebody's, is because they pretty much have it dialed in. I'm just going to basically put my name in it. That's the reason for me to use somebody else's plan. If not, I'm just going to create one from scratch, which I'll show you guys here in a second doing that as well. Well, any other question on this before I get going?
The Twilio, is it Twilio all or Twilio, there's like a couple?
It's Twilio through command, and don't go anywhere else. It's all in command. So 300 messages in Twilio is $3.16 a month, and then it goes up from there. To me, it's well worth it. I love having a work line that's not my cell phone, and when they call me at that number, I can still receive that phone call in my phone. So you're not losing anything. A couple quick things. So we've designed this plan. We're happy with it. I actually do want to show you one more feature within text messages. So let's go back to that first day text message. And you guys notice how here it says static and then it says dynamic. Dynamic means that I want to have multiple messages that it would rotate. So I can actually add up to 5, I think it's 5 or 7. Let me see. More now, 6. So I can add 6 different text messages so that it rotates. Where I've used this particular feature, it was actually when I first started using it was during COVID. When we shut down, I was using command to have it text 20 people in my database every single day. And throughout all of COVID, that's what I did. 20 messages a day, automatic, but I wanted to make sure people didn't get the same message month to month. So if they got message 1 this month, next month, they can only get one of the other 5 messages. So that's what I leverage that particular feature for. I think you can do it also for ads. I mean, you can do it for anything, but the idea here is that maybe you want to have multiple variations of a message for an ongoing plan. So really you would want to use this if it's going to be an ongoing plan. If it's just a one-time thing, just dial in what your message is and activate that one. Any question on that? Good, okay.
What's the name of this plan?
It's not a particular name. We just pick whatever plan. You don't need to worry about that right now. Yeah. Now, one of the things, and I'm going to tie this to the referral network here in a little bit. So there's a feature up here that you see says trigger event. Here's what that is. When I click on trigger event, I have some options. So my option is this, and well, really, I guess it's one option. Yeah, you can only trigger based on a tag. So I'm going to use the example of A2A referral program. That's the tag that I utilize for my referral partners, my agent partners in other states. So when I have a smart plan that's already designed that has 9 emails in it, just emails. So it's literally one email, 30-day delay, another email, 30-day delay, another email. So I designed that smart plan so that I can email market to people that I'm building relationships with. And I'll show you guys all that here later when we get to that section. Why I'm bringing this up here is that when I add a contact to the database, the moment I tag them A2A referral program, if I had clicked this button right here and hit choose trigger, confirm trigger, anytime somebody gets activated that has a tag for A2A referral program, that plan is going to activate. That's going to automatically activate for you. So go ahead.
From the start.
From the moment you add that contact and you tag them that from the start. So they're going to get a text message literally that day, whatever that text message is that you have in there. That would start automatically.
Or email or whatever.
Or email or whatever it is. Yep, exactly, whatever it is. So that's one feature. Another feature in here is what do you want to happen at the end of the smart plan? So when you click here, all right. So at the end of the smart plan, so right now it ends with an email, but maybe I wanted to start another plan. Maybe I want to stack plans on top of each other. If I wanted to do that, then either I would add to a smart plan. So I'm going to click add to smart plan, and then it's going to ask me, it's going to give me the names of all my smart plans in my library, and I'm going to pick the one that I want them to go on. Literally just click it and hit save, and then after that last email, literally the same day of that email, now boom, they go to the smart plan that I selected, which is called Met Referral Request. I want to take that off, just hit exit or the X sign and then remove it. Or I could restart the smart plan. Or I can restart the smart plan. Questions? Am I losing anybody?
Powerful.
Yeah.
Does that also play into, I read something about we're gonna need MailChimp?
You don't need MailChimp. We have Command. Command is a database that can send emails. You have 5,000 emails included with your monthly fee.
So Twilio for sure.
Twilio is something extra if you want to use
For
that
the
feature.
messaging part of it.
Yep.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So how many smart plans can you do per contact?
Manage you want. Manage you want.
Because you don't want to bug them.
It depends on what you're doing. Now, it depends on what you're doing. I don't know if you were here in this part, but this is where I'm starting. So I'm going to go now back to the library again because I want to show you guys how to find these particular ones. It's not about bugging them. If I'm creating a plan, it's because of there's something of value I want to bring. I want to get into communication and I want to automate it. If I had to send each text, send each email, remember myself to make each call, like this is never going to get done.
Right.
Never. You might be able to do that with 10 people. When you hit 100 people, you're not going to be able to do that.
Right.
So sorry for anybody if you do this, don't be old school and take note cards and live off of that. That's not a database. I'm just saying.
So
If you're laughing, it's because that was you then.
these would count as our like D2, D1, whatever.
DT, so what she's mentioning, DTD2, remember, is do the database twice. No, it depends if you use it. I did use it for that. I did. So when I was doing those 20 messages a day from during that COVID timeframe, I was doing that in place of it because at the end of the day, I was stressing out during that time, and my daughter was at home homeschooling. That sucked. So I did leverage it for that at that time. However, you don't want to replace text messages with the phone calls and relationships that you should be building with people. Where I could see myself doing this to the database today, text messaging, is maybe I'm doing an event in October and I want to send invites to them. So I'm probably going to send text invite, email invite, and then repeat it over and over. So that's a place where I may leverage that. Let's go ahead.
Can you propose one, show us how to do one for, say, we just did an open house with
Absolutely.
names and numbers. We
Yeah.
Come back and plug in the data.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that in a second. Let me first show you guys how to find these. So let's get back to the library real fast. Make sure I hit that okay. I connected in that way. So I'm gonna go back to the library. And I want to find the monthly neighborhood nurture, so I can literally just start typing in. I'm just gonna put in monthly, so it doesn't. There it is. There's the monthly neighborhood nurture right there. And if I look at the steps. Mouse is going crazy. It sends an automated email. 30 days later, it just keeps repeating. And this just repeats over and over and over and over. On Monday, if you missed that, that was the report. Remember where we select their neighborhood in their contact card, and then the report, that's how that's automated. Now, there is remember I mentioned you can do it twice a month as well. Let me just show you that. If you actually just scroll down, by the way, you can just go to who the parties are, or who the party. Well, yeah, I guess who generated, who curated it. So these are if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see here, these are Keller Williams provided ones. That's where you go find it. So there's the bi-weekly neighborhood nurture right there. Go ahead.
I wasn't here for that neighborhood. Could you do that real quick?
Let me park and lot that, just so we don't get too far off. Contact neighborhood. Remind me, but there's a little reminder for all of us. So that's where I would find it now. I want to add that smart plan again to my library. And actually, I don't have it in my library, so I can actually hit add to my library right now. I can name it and download it. And now when I go to my library, it's right in there at the top. It's always gonna go right to the top. Then in here, I can either edit if there's any edits that need to be made. You don't need to edit in the smart plan. Now, really, what you need to do is add people. To add people, there's a couple different ways to do it. So one way is right here where it says actions. I can add contact. And I can add either specific tags. I can narrow down my tags, or I can literally just scroll down, hit select all, and then go page by page and add people. So that's one way to add them to a smart plan. Another way, I might be able to hit this part here now. Let me just open up a separate window real fast so I can. Another way to add people, let's go look at our contacts. Let's say, for example, all these people right here on my first page, I'm looking at 10 people. Maybe I want to look at 25 people at a time, and I want to add all 25 of them to the same smart plan. I can either click one by one, maybe there's only 3 people I need to do, or I can select all, and I'm gonna take a bulk action. And the bulk action I want to take right now is that I want to add to smart plan, and then I'm gonna pick the smart plan. There are the 2 that I just added. I'm gonna pick the one I want. It is gonna ask me one other question. When I select it, it's gonna ask me, well, first off, these people are missing information. So I'm gonna remove contacts with errors. And then it's gonna ask me, when do I want to start it? Do I want to start it right now? Do I want to start on a particular date, or do I want to stagger it and start over the next few days? So let's think we have 100 people. Actually, I'll use the text messaging as an example, 20 a day. That's how I did that. That's how I knew it was only going to be 20 a day, because I put all 400 people on it, but I limited to only 20 contacts per day. Limited to 20 contacts per day. Go for it.
Can Twilio access the do not call list?
No, it does not. So again, you want to leverage this feature with people you're in real connection with. Would I do it to complete strangers? I'm not saying you can, but you may be at a TCPA compliance. Yeah, so you gotta just be careful there. But that's how I ended up doing the 20 a day, because I just staggered them over 20 per day until they got through the end of the list. Questions on that?
So
I exit this because I don't want nothing to happen.
you accomplish that. How do you go back and ensure that everything looks right? I know that you can go in for the edits on that smart plan, change the date.
Yeah.
Remove the date, change the paragraph, whatever, but. You know, it's like if you're gonna print a newsletter, you look at it like 6 times and look at it and someone else look at it 6 times.
Yeah. Well,
So I mean.
so we're back to the smart plan library.
See how it looks when the customer receives it. How do you see that?
Well, here's the thing, when you go to, let's say we do a design versus a simple text email, you see that preview in design. Because you've already created that.
So the creation side is the only way to see what we would.
Correct. If you do an email that's a design email. So let me go back and edit this test one that we've been working on. The text message, there's no preview. This is the text message. So, I mean, you really don't need to preview a text message. It really, what you're asking, I think only applies to emails. If it's a design email, well, there's the design I picked. I could hit preview the design and see what I've created. This is just a test email. So this is what they would be receiving.
That answers my question.
I'll just hit this while we're here because everybody thinks that when they see this in the preview mode, that means it's missing. That information auto-populates from your profile. So all this right here in preview mode will be automatically populated on yours.
Nice.
There you go. So that's how you can see, again, when you're designing it, you're previewing it as you go. Any other question on the screen?
If they reply to these messages, does it go to like your directly to your email or phone number?
If it's an email, yes, and if it's a phone, it's going to go to your Twilio account, which the way to best be on top of it is to make sure you have the red KW app on your phone and make sure you have notifications turned on. So like, just like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, you get alerted on your home screen, hey, you have a message, just like that. Good question. All right, go back to the library for a moment, and we now know how to find the neighborhood nurture one, and then literally for the birthday one, just type in birthday, and there's the birthday one. I don't know why that happened. I'm just gonna go down to the Keller Williams. I don't know why. So I just went down to the Keller Williams, and there it is, birthday. Now remember, for the birthday smart plan to work, you actually need to have their birthday in command. If you don't have their birthday in command, it's not going to activate. So just remember that. And then the home anniversary one should be right here as well. Let's just keep going. There it is under the Keller Williams library. There's the home anniversary one right there. And then you can see what the steps are if you want to see it. So this one has a send a gift or a card. 6 days later, phone call. So essentially, the smart plan is to remind you, hey, their anniversary is in 7 days, send something in the mail. And then the day of, you give them a call. Hey, congratulations on your 4 years of home ownership. I'm so excited to have been a part of that journey with you. How have you been? How's the family? How's work? Any fun plans for the holiday season? Wow, great to connect with you. And then I'll send them another card again right after that conversation. Say, hey, it was so amazing to catch up with you on Friday. So glad to hear you're doing well and the house is amazing. Oh, by the way, here's our updated list of vendors in case anything happens in the next couple of months and you need somebody. Oh, smart plans. Questions? Any of these three? Okay. While we're here, I want to talk about one other smart plan. And it's the quarterly call reminder. You have two options. You have two options as it relates to how to be reminded to call people 4 times a year. Your first option is going to be what we talked about on Monday, which was the DTD2. Who remembers what that stands for? Do the database twice. And simply, let me actually go into my contacts real fast. If I filter my tags that I use, notice how, and I'll give you guys all the letters. I won't have it right now to get to you, but there's 12 combinations of letters, if I'm not mistaken. So like, for example, A and W is one combination, B and E is another combination. The idea there is to create these tags in command. So let's say, for example, you're going to create a tag that's called A and W, B and E, and so forth. And it's just based on people's last names. So if I, for example, want to go look at all my A's and W's in my database, let's say that's the letter of the week that I should be calling. What will end up happening is I will see this. So all my A's and W's are now here in the system ready for me to call. So this week I have 39 people in my database that I should be calling. Let me pull up something real fast. Some of you might recognize this if you're already in coaching with me. Wow, I went right literally to the page. So I have this tab in one of my business plan files. If you guys are in coaching with me, you've probably already seen this. If we haven't started yet, you will see this eventually. And this is how I kind of keep track of all the marketing that is happening to the database. So here you can see, here are the letters. So when you start off the year, week 1, A's and W, B's and E's, D's and O's, you're probably going to want to write this down. This is the reason I pulled this up. Pull these letters up, write these letters down right now, or take a picture of it and write it down later. Because what you're gonna wanna do is actually go into command. I'll give you guys a second to take this, so then you guys can focus on what I'm gonna show you next. The idea here again is I wanna show you two ways to make sure that you're calling your people quarterly. Two systems behind it. I'll wait till everybody's phones are mostly down and then I'll keep going. It again?
Not a paper.
No, I mentioned it. Yeah, if we're not in coaching already, we will be. Hopefully, you guys will desire to meet with me. I will give you this. Yeah. All right, everybody good? All right, let's focus on what I'm going to show you now. So, what if you decide, I'm going to show you both systems, and then you got to figure out what works for you. Okay? I'm going to show you both. You figure out what works for you. If I'm going to go through the system where I'm going to alphabetize everybody, the first thing I need to do is actually go into command. Let me just start a new command tab so I don't have to hop around too much. And I'm going to go to settings. I'm going to click settings because I haven't set this up yet, so I need to get it going. And then I'm going to go to command settings. I'm going to go to contacts and I'm going to go to contact tags. And here's where I can see all the tags that I'm currently utilizing. You'll see the ones that the system already generates for you. There's like 12, I think, that's pre-generated for you. And then you'll see the ones that I've created. So you're simply just going to hit create tag and start creating these. So you got create and your W. And then pick your color if you want to colorize it and then hit create. Go through and create all of the tags. And then from there, let's say you already have an existing database, but it's just not organized in this format. Then you can do a couple things. One of the ways I did it is that I would just look at my database and I would look at maybe 10 people at a time, and I would tag everybody appropriately. I don't know if maybe that might be a tedious way to do it. Honestly, it did take me a while doing it that way. Another way is just simply when it's time to call people, you alphabetize it at that point. So it just depends on what works for you. For me, it was easier, I felt, at that time to just look at all my people, go page by page, and just tag everybody appropriately. Now, for clarity here, the only people that I have on this are the people that are my Mets, people that I know in relationship with, that I need to maintain those relationships with. If I mention an open house, for example, and remind me to talk about open house smart plan in a second. If I mention an open house, I technically don't have a relationship with you, so you're not necessarily going on that yet. I'm going to market to you in a different way. But once we do establish a good, solid relationship, I'm going to then put you on this to do my quarterly call with you. So again, you guys decide, but I for the most part, leverage this on people that definitely are either raving fans, past customers, have sent business to me, people that I just need to stay in relationship with. So I have about, I think, about 450 maybe that are specifically on that particular plan. Everybody else, for the most part, is email marketing or whatever other marketing I have them set up on. So create the tags first, then go through and properly tag everybody. And if you guys look at our training calendar, Joe pointed this out on Monday. On the left-hand side of our training calendar, there's letters there. It's to remind you what letters you should be focused on that week. Or if you end up leveraging this form with me, you can also then just literally click the date of whatever the first date of the year is. And then from there, it tells you week by week what letters you should be focused on. So by the time you get through that year, you've called everybody 4 times at least. All right, so that's one method. I'll show you another method. I'll show you why I didn't use this next method I'm going to show you, but now that I know more about command, there is a way to make it work. And it's called my quarterly call plan, I think is what it is. So let's look for it in the library. In the library, I think it's called my, it's not mine, I think it's just quarterly. Hold on. Keyboard is having a little funky delay. There it is. Quarterly call plan is called. Quarterly call plan. Look how many times it's been used a lot. It's common one people use to remind themselves. Let me just add this one to my database. So quarterly call plan. Just call it test. Let me add this to my not my database. Let me add that to my library. That's what I meant to say. So I'm going to go back to Smartplans, and I can see that Smartplan there. There it is. My quarterly call plan test. Let me see what the steps look like in this plan. Oh, quarterly call, 90-day delay, quarterly call. Here's the challenge with this one. This is the part that I didn't know at that time, but now that I do know, I'll teach you a way to do it so it doesn't get messy. I started originally with this. The problem I ran into is that I put 400 people on it. So what do you think happened every 90 days? I had a task remind. I had 400 task reminders. Remember we covered tasks on Monday. That's where it reminds you. I had 400 task reminders. And then the challenge I ran into is that I was like, well, I have other things that are important too, but it was all mixed in with these 400 other reminders. So it was kind of frustrating, if maybe the simplest way to put it. So that's why I didn't use it. But if you guys remember a few seconds ago, I just showed you a way that you could leverage it. So for example, let's say I do want to add my people on here. Let me go to add contacts. And let's just say I'm going to go look for my sphere of influence, which for me, I call them Mets. So it's under that. So I just want to go find my Mets. And what I want to do is there's 391. I'm going to hit select all, and then I got to go page by page and add them all. But let's just hypothetically say for now, I've hit all 391. I haven't. I want to add them to this smart plan. It's saying, hey, these people are missing phone numbers, so don't worry. I would just add the plan anyways. Remember this? The reason is because at that time I was doing start now, which what I should have done is staggered them and done it that way. So if I were to, if I have, what was it, 391 I had? So I'm just going to round up. If I have 400 people, divide that by 3 months, divide that by 4 weeks, and divide that by 5 days, it's rounding up 7 people a day. So I'm going to actually just have this do 7 people per day. So now every day I log in, I have 7 new people that I need to be contacted. So this probably seems a lot easier, as I just explained it. This probably seems a little bit easier than setting up the letters. I already had that system rolling, so I don't want to break it. Both ways can do the job. Questions on that? I'm not going to save this, so I'm going to exit.
I have just a quick question. Does each smart plan have to have a neighborhood?
Be a little bit more specific because,
Like just in general, like, do you have to have a neighborhood?
well, it depends on what the smart plan is. If it's clearly this smart plan, then yes, it needs to have it. If it's just a smart plan, well, let's have some fun with this. So I'm putting on an event in October and I want to start my marketing for this event. So let's just create a scratch. I'm back at my library or my smart plans, not library. If I'm going to put on an event, remember what I said earlier, I mean, don't recreate the wheel. I'm going to probably first check to see if there's a smart plan that's been used for event. And then there's 220 plans that say events in it. I might decide just to go through a couple of these of them, look at the steps and say, hey, that works, or it doesn't work. Honestly, I may lose more time doing that. I might just go back to my smart plans and create one from scratch. Top right, create one from scratch. And I'm going to call this an event invite October. Jesus. Yes. Apply. And I have a clean slate. And if I'm smart about this, I'm going to probably end up using a trigger for it, a tag. But right now, for me to be able to create a trigger, I got to at least get the plan laid out. So let's decide. I mean, maybe I want to start with a text. And remember the dynamic text we talked about? Maybe I want to have 3 variations of that text invite because I'm going to run this for a couple of weeks. So maybe I do 3 text messages. So I'm just going to condense that down. I have 3 text options. I want to do a delay. So I'm going to set delay. So I'm just literally clicking it. And I want to put a 3-day delay in there. Hit save. It's airing out because I need to put something in here or else it won't save. So let me just put test in here for now. Save. Okay, and then I want an email to go out after the 3-day delay. So I'm gonna click send email. I'm either gonna do a text email or I've already pre-designed one. Right, so I'm gonna pick it out. So let's say I'm gonna just pick something from the library that I've already created. Maybe it's this. Got it. And I'm gonna just exit, save, and there we go. That's the email that's gonna go out on day 4. Then maybe I want to get a call reminder to now call them. And I want to do that after that email. Let's say I want to set another delay and I want 2 days later to do a call reminder. So 2 days, I set the 2-day delay, and then I'm going to do a call. And I just want to remind them to call them to invite to event. I can set the date, the due dates. I can set the times. You can get that detailed if you like. And it's, remember, this is all going to show up in your task. And then maybe I want to set a delay again. I don't know, 5 days later, I want a text message to go out again. So I set my 5-day delay. Let me just, it doesn't save. Notice that if you don't put something, it was the subject that was missing. So I was missing subject. It doesn't save. It gives you that little red message. So let's see, where did I leave off? I got a 5-day delay. The previous to that was a phone call. I want to do another text message. I can do that. Or back to the point where I said I put in the first box 3 text message options. Maybe I just want this to repeat itself now. Text, email, call, text, email, call. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a repeat, restart Smartplan. And I want to repeat up to, you can go from 1 to 6 different times that you can repeat the Smartplan. Save it. And now what will end up happening is on the next text message, it's going to filter to one of the other 2 messages. It won't send the same one again.
So you can't put any order to them. That would be
Well, text 1, 2, 3. I mean, but it just won't. It will be sure not to send it twice in a row.
What do you think would be an appropriate trigger for that? You want it to eventually go to everyone.
Perfect. Great question. So we're talking about an event right now, right? As this example goes. So here's what I would do. If I'm doing an event, it's probably because it's going to be to my sphere of influence, which I call them Mets. So I would probably create a trigger that's Mets. Actually, no, I wouldn't do that because then it would literally, I wouldn't do that. So here's what I would do then. I'm going to actually do this. I'm going to go back to settings in command, and remember under tags, I'm actually going to set up a tag, and I'm going to call it October invite.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm going to do.
And so even if you add someone new to your database, you would just use that tag and then it would get added on. Does it get
Correct.
added on even if the campaign is in flow?
Yes, if the campaign is in flow, let's say I started it last week and I had somebody today, it keeps
And
adding
it starts from the beginning?
from day 1. Yep,
Okay.
it starts from the beginning. Yep. Yeah, so like I'll give you an example. One of the smart plans I do, let's use a real example here. So when I'm done creating this, I'm going to hit save. I'm not going to do it for this example. I'll hit save, and then it's going to be in your library right there. One of the smart plans that, for example, I utilize for realtors that we started back up. I think some of you heard me say this. We add 100 agents a week to this smart plan, and this smart plan, what I've done, I'll go to the edit mode so you can kind of get a visual on it, and it's going to. I'll show it to you now because then our next topic on referrals, this is where you would use that. So I have a smart plan that on the first email, I already have an email that's been designed. So it's receive a 30% referral fee subject. And then there's an email, very simple email. Receive a 30% referral fee, the link to a video, a little message, and then my signature. Then I have a 30-day delay. And then they're getting another email. Hey, this one's highlighting the areas we cover. Notice how they're all designs. They're not simple emails. So I pre-created these designs. 30 days later, there's another one. So I do that for, I think, 6 months. I said, how many emails are in here? So you see every 30 days, they're getting an email. And then, so I create the plan first. Notice that at the top, my trigger is A2A referral program. So when I add you to the database and I add that tag, boom, you're automatically in that plan, and it's going to start from step 1 for you. It starts at step 1. So again, anything that's going to be not a one-off, like for example, a monthly newsletter, that's a one-off. You do that every month. You design it because there's new content you're going to put in it. I mean, if you're telling me you're designing 12 newsletters for the whole year, that's kind of weird to me. Like, how are you designing it for the whole year? You may have the layout, you may have the ideas, but whatever you do them, right? You can't. You can't design it 12 months in advance.
Well, I design, or I have the template,
Right, the template.
and then I usually don't put the content in until the last week, unless there's something that's kind of timeless, and then you can put it in, but so many things happen close in and you want to see time.
Right. So for this, I want to use a smart plan because that's a one-off every single month email. But for this, I already know what I want to send them for the next 6-7 months, whatever I have right here. So I pre-create those. Questions on that? Okay to ask questions. Yes. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Another set of ideas for smart plans. As you were saying all this stuff, I was thinking, what about the people who suffered tragic loss from the hurricane?
Go on.
Immediately, it would seem that the important time to get a hold of them to make sure that, I don't know, but since I got from a lot of people on the end, it's like, well, I'm not gonna talk to people because they're in their moment of need, but then I drive by again, I see a sign that someone talked to them.
Yeah.
And they moved their property, or it was destroyed or whatever. So the situation like Ian, could you write a smart plan that would say, hey, it's coming up on a year, what are you thinking about, something, and then the second one I thought of was a bereavement plan.
Yeah. So the answer is yes, you can do it. Just think it through is all I would say. So for example, when Ian hit, and I didn't do it for that, but I'm going back to Irma for a second, because when Irma hit, I remember I was in the coaching program called Bold, and we do phone calls in Bold. We make 20 contacts a day. Bold doesn't stop. We still need to have 20 contacts a day. There were different contacts when Irma hit, and Irma wasn't bad as Ian. What do you guys think the call looked like when Irma hit? And Ian, same thing.
What are you doing?
We didn't have any service.
Yeah. Are you
Well, that's true too.
Are you doing? Are you here? Have you evacuated?
Yeah.
Is there anything you need?
That's literally it. Now, at that time, we were doing it one-off, so I was literally calling, texting, and working my database that way. Clearly, I started with the people I'm already doing business with first, checked on their homes, things like that. But let's just say I have 200 more people, it's a lot of messages. Could I automate it through this? Absolutely. Just, you got to make sure it's personalized, and you think it through. That's it.
And can you also stack tags? Like you want to distribute to multiple different groups?
Yes, so here's the thing, if the tag is on, because I'm glad you asked the question earlier, if the tag is already in the system and people are tagged that, it won't work. You have to create a new tag. So for example, this event that I just did right here, where I was going to go to my Mets, I can't use Mets as a trigger because these people already tagged that. It has to be a new trigger. It has to be a new trigger.
But you can create 3 triggers or 1 trigger? With that?
Let's see, I haven't never really wanted to. I think 2. How many triggers can you pick?
Can you do a date as a trigger?
No.
Like for your October campaign, start sending things out on the 1st of September?
You can, because you remember when we add a smart plan, it says start now, start later, or stagger it, you would click the second option. Yeah. So for example, if I did want this smart plan to start, or whatever smart plan I'm working on to start on the 1st of the month, then yes, I could technically say, hey, start September 1st. If it's a plan that needs to be timed in such a fashion. Yeah. Here's the thing, guys, you
Backwards planning of 90 days.
Yeah. Well, whatever your time frame is, the reality is this, guys, you can do whatever you want. It's however makes sense for you and how you want to communicate with the people. When COVID hit, I didn't want to call anybody. I was in my own self, and I just said, all right, well, I still need to have these messages go out. And in today's world, everybody talks through text message. So I just created my 6 text messages and I activated it 20 a day, starting from day 1. Whatever you want to do with it.
When the text comes through, sorry, keep on back to the text, does it look like an auto text, like it gives you the option to unsubscribe?
Yes, so it will give you the option to unsubscribe. My recommendation on that is if you're going to leverage Twilio in your business to your database, they need to know it's actually you well in advance. So like, let's say you activated that today. My first message is, hey, it's Jordas, Reyes, Keller Williams Realty. I wanted you to save this number. This is one of my work lines. Save it in for my contact. That's what I would do. And then for the new people you meet, example, open house, they don't know any different. Or to them, I mean, yes, they know it's a work line, but I would just make it clear, like, hey, this is my work. Yep. Go ahead, Joe.
I just found one called hurricane season. Is your database prepared for the hurricane season?
Mhm.
That's a great, and then we could just add.
Yeah, the key to that, Joe, and any smart plan in the library team is there's rarely any smart plan other than these automated ones like this, that you just want to adopt it and not make a change. You have to make changes to the smart plans that you take from other people. Because if not, they're gonna get some other realtor's name or some other realtor's app. You gotta change the smart plan to make sure it is unique to you. So I want to make mention of that. Real fast before I lose my train of thought, while we're here, let me just go to let me hit these two questions real fast up here. The first thing I want to hit is open house to Jeff, to your point earlier. So let me just discard this. We don't want to really do anything here. If I want to look for open house smart plan, where do I go? Library. Let's see what everybody out there is already doing. Why recreate the wheel? Oh my God, there's 358 smart plans for open houses. Here's the most commonly downloaded one. What do those steps look like? Text messages. Hey, Jordas, thanks for coming by. What did you think of the open house? The idea is that at the open house, you're literally adding them to command after they sign in, and boom, they're already getting the message from you. One day later, send a nice to meet you at the open house email. That's not automated, the email. Notice it's a task reminding you to go send that email. 2 days later, it's reminding you to call them. 3 days later, there's an automated text. Hey, I have a few more, a few open houses coming up that I think you would be interested in. Would you like me to send you a list? 4 days later is a phone call reminder. 3 days later, a text again. So I would probably leverage that, because the reality is this smart plan, I'll go to you here in a second, it's going to run for 20 days and it's going to have 7 touches in those 20 days with the intent of building a relationship with this complete stranger you just met.
These look mostly text related, or they can do emails too, though.
Yeah.
I have a really dumb, how do we send, like, if we just want to auto, like, I want to send an email, like you were saying, I wouldn't use I would just send an email to everyone.
For like a newsletter as an example.
Yeah.
So good question. So if you want to email somebody a newsletter, you got to create the newsletter first.
Yeah.
In designs, we'll hit that at another class. Once your design email is created, it's actually in campaigns. We're actually going to cover that on Monday. So be here on Monday, because I got to make sure I hit on the other thing here. But if you're going to send an email to more than a few people,
Yeah.
you need to put them on. You need to create the design, and then we would set up a campaign.
We can't just send a group email.
Well, that is how you send a group email. A campaign is a group email. So like if you want to send a newsletter to 100 people, for example, you would go into campaigns, we pick the 100 people that we're going to be going into, and then that's going to automate it to send for you. On Monday, we'll go deeper into that. Okay. I got 30 minutes left to cover referrals, which is plenty of time, but any other questions on Smartplans?
You mentioned here's my app. How would we go to that QR?
It's actually, you can automate it. So like, for example, let's go back to this test plan that we've been messing around with. Which one was it? Right here. So in the text message, I can say, test, hello, first name. Here is my mobile app, as an example. And then on the right-hand side here, this little drop down, it can automatically populate that for you. So you're gonna click that, and there's your app link right there. This is, again, if you're gonna do it in bulk. If you're just gonna send it to one person, go to your app and then just text it to them.
Of course, but if you're trying to do the masses.
That's how you do it.
Say that one more time.
Yep, well, I just modified the text message, hit the little arrow on the right-hand side here, and I selected the field for app link. It's just pulling from your profile, your unique link to you. So they're gonna receive this text that says, hello, here's my mobile app link, and then there'll be a link in the text they receive.
And that text will not say unsubscribe and all of that.
If it's the first text message you've ever sent them, yeah.
If you met them and in the first text you send them, it's like an auto text.
Well, correct, but that's where you gotta be strategic here. if it's somebody brand new, my first message is gonna include something along the lines of, this is my work line, this is me, save my number.
Yeah, and if you're saying that, and then you're sending another text later saying, how did you like that? I don't know,
But I guess that's where you pick the one you like.
Listen, if you met me, if I met you at an open house and I got the text right away, that, I mean, yes, I know it's automated, but at the end of the day, I know it's you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, if here's what I will say in general, I'm not picking on you here, but if we allow little details like that, I don't know what the right word is, handcuff? You're gonna be handcuffed a lot.
Right.
Don't overanalyze things.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, there are things we should analyze and be careful on.
I just
This-
know what I do when I get auto. Delete.
Well, again, this is why you don't necessarily, I wouldn't leverage it right away with complete strangers. If I have here's what I know, the last listing I got, they responded to one of my work line, not my cell phone.
The numbers game.
It's not even a numbers game, it's just it's a phone number to nurture your people. These are, I wouldn't necessarily leverage it just for complete strangers. It depends on what your strategy is. I'll just make a point, for example, like I do a lot of Facebook ads. I leverage it for Facebook ads. Are there gonna be people that unsubscribe? Yeah. Still gonna call them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's still gonna call them.
Yeah, because they subscribe.
Yeah, exactly. Here's what I will tell you. The people who already know me in relationship with me, they don't unsubscribe. Unless I burn that page. Now they usually don't unsubscribe. So I'll just put it to you that way. I never had somebody unsubscribe that I'd like broke my heart because I thought we were friends and now
Yeah.
it hasn't happened. All right, I gotta move on to. Go.
Like, call them and just like, hey, not for nothing, like, the reason you or you did not, let them go, bye. Yeah.
If I remember earlier when I on the archives,
Yes.
that would be
Okay.
5,000 people that I would have just said, why did you unsubscribe from me? I'm like, I don't care. It broke my heart. All right, I'm gonna shift over for the next 25 minutes or so to the referral network. So here's what I want you to think about with the referral network before I start. I'm gonna show you how to use the whole program. If you are deciding that you want to tap into the Keller Williams referral network, you need to create a smart plan for yourself that is a series of emails with delays and emails. So just stack it. Just create a smart plan that's literally email delay for however many months you want to do. When I first did it, I started with 3 months of emails that I pre-generated, because what then I did when I created that is then I had a trigger, which I used to tag A2A, which is just, to me, stands for agent to agent. So when I tag people that, they automatically started on this. When I designed the smart plan, then that's out of the way. Now I just focused on however many people a day I want to add. So our goal was always 20 a day. I always added 20 new agents to the database every single day. And that just kept ongoing. What I will tell you is this: when I first started this is 2 years ago. In the first week, I had 2 referrals, and one of them closed within 30 days over here. What's the community with the gas station inside of it over there on I don't know. So referrals do come from it. I've said this before to somebody else this week that I've shown this system to a lot of people. I only know of 2 agents in this office that I've taught it who actually do use it. And I think if you talk to both of them, they will tell you it is working for them as well to get referrals. So if time allows, what I will do is show you an idea. I did show you what the smart plan looks like. It's just videos. Most of them some are just a message. The other ones are videos, just kind of getting to know me. Hey, I'm Jordas. Here's where I live. Here's what I serve. Here's what we do. Here's how we can make you look good when you send a referral our way. That's literally all it was. So design your smart plan and have your trigger, and then they'll start adding realtors so that the minute you add them and tag them it's automatically started the plan for you.
Can you elaborate on, you say 20 realtors a day, so you just meeting everybody and getting their cards and then adding them?
No. Yeah, maybe at an event, like if I went to a national event, like the one I'm going to in Austin, yes, I would do it there. But no offense, guys, I don't want you in my database.
Like, because we're in the same shop.
We're local. Yeah, we're local. Let me go into the tab now, because then you'll see the strategy I took to do it. I'll teach it to you guys. The goal here for me is that you learn this strategy, how to start connecting with realtors. But more importantly, you just got one of your database people to call you and they have a referral in New York, or they have someone they want to buy in New York. You don't serve New York, but we do have tons of agents up there. I want to get a referral fee on this. This is where I go to find people. So let's go to the referrals tab. Start changes, and now we're in the referrals tab. So when you go to the referrals tab, the dashboard, it's very much like your friends list on Facebook. So if you look at mine, it says that in my referral network, I have 786 people that I'm friends with. Here's the list of them. And then I can send a referral right through the platform as well. So I can literally say I wanted to send Aaron a referral. I can tell them it's a seller referral or it's a buyer referral, what I want for a fee, the time to accept my my referral, price points, etc. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I wouldn't do that. I want to talk to Aaron. Is Aaron a match for my partner referral? If Aaron's not a match, I don't want to necessarily send him to Aaron. So I'm showing you this feature, but I'm going to be very transparent with you guys. I don't use the network. I started using the network, but clearly I have 786 people that I added to my friends list. I have 184 that still haven't even accepted my friend request. When I had the realization that a lot of agents out there are not adopting this, I'm like, well, okay, how do I still use this in my favor? I can find realtors here easily. And what do I have when I find them? I have their name, their phone number, and their email. That's all I need to create my email list of agents. So that's what I essentially started. I stopped adding them to my friends list and I started just adding them into my database as a contact. So when you look at my contacts in command, the filter I use is called the A2A referral program. And that's about 3,000 people right now. Plus the other ones that I want archived over the years. So I add them to the database because this allows me to email market to them. If I just add them as a friend over here, it doesn't allow me to email market to them. All this does for me is the following. I can go to the map. And when you go to the map, we're going to use New York as the example on this. I can look for people either based on production, I can look up market center, or I can look up my network. That would be the value of doing it through here. I can click my network and it's only going to show me the 700, what was it, 786 people that I was connected with. And you have to be patient, by the way, with this system because it's pulling a lot of data from all over the world. So here it's just going to start showing the agents I'm already friend requested with. This is cool if everybody used it this way. Again, I wanted to be more proactive. I didn't want to just be friends with you. I wanted to actually email market to you in advance. So that's why I stopped doing this and only approached from a marketing perspective, building an email list, which I'll hit in a minute. Go for it.
What would a personalized message look like
To who?
to the random person that you wanted to be in your back?
Hey, I'm Jordas Reyes, agent here in Southwest Florida. Taken bold 9 times. I've been with Keller Williams 7 years. I'm part of the Agent Leadership Council. I'm this, I'm that. If you're the areas I serve, I would love to be in a relationship with you, a referral partner relationship. I mean, it could be as simple as that. I'll show you guys an example of what I actually did to do it. Maybe that'll help you. Real fast. So I'm gonna go back to dashboard for a second. And I want to just clarify again, this is like your friends list. I'm not saying don't add people on there, but you can't email market to them by just adding them here. So honestly, for me, I just bypass all that. And when I add them into the database, I also put their city name in their name. There's Darlene Morris. Darlene Morris is Northeast Miami. So for me, it's a lot easier now for me to type in Miami if I really do want to go find a referral partner there. And I have a lot to choose from. I have 238 to choose from that I've been in communication with.
Going if you had her sitting in somewhere else besides her name, it would find it by my.
Say that again.
If you only used the name in the
Correct.
contact, but you put Miami somewhere else in your database of that person, wouldn't it find it that way?
It doesn't.
You could use a tag though.
You could use a tag, but what I didn't want to do is create tags for all the cities and things like that. So the easiest method for me at that time, if you guys come up with something more unique, go for it. This for me is what I felt would work for me at that given time. Here's the reality of it. I have 238 in Miami, but I know on social media, I'm already connected to a few that I'm actually in relationship with and engaging with. They may probably already be in here. I'm gonna go to that list first. Now, here's the thing. If Christopher Tello sends me a referral, I'm gonna now isolate Chris as an actual Mets. So I'm gonna now actually maintain my quarterly calls with Chris because now he's actually already sent me a referral. And I want to make sure that Chris is always top of mind for me when I start thinking Pembroke Pines area in this case. So let me go back. I want to speed up a little bit because I want to make sure I hit everything and not take away from Jeff. My referrals is simply where you go to track the referrals you've sent out to agents. So when I did this send referrals, that's where you track them. I've noticed that a lot of agents are not leveraging it. They're literally just calling you, hey, I want to work with you. And they're just having their broker sign the referral form, and that's fine. No judgment. I still kind of been doing that too. Because again, not everyone is adopting this tool as a way to track it. But what I like about it is that you can, if I send Aaron a referral and he accepts it, Aaron can never tell me, oh, who are you? Oh, I didn't meet them through you. Granted, I would never give Aaron my customer's information without Aaron's broker signing a form saying agreeing to the referral to begin with. Go ahead.
Is that part tied in command?
The referral form, it is in DocuSign, which is opportunities, which is not today's class. It'll be next class.
Okay.
Yep.
So this doesn't take the place of that actual referral.
No, I would always still
This
do
is
it.
just recording.
Yeah, I would still do it. I would still do it. Yeah. All right.
So, I'm sorry, so when you enter your people, you physically go in there and type in their name
Let me show you what I do.
and their city.
Yeah, so let's just go for it. I'm gonna show you two things real quick, how to find an agent in New York in today's example, and how I go about adding agents, because I got about 16 minutes or so. So let's go to map view. And I want to find an agent in New York. So what I like to do personally is I like to go and search by market center. Plus it bogs the system down a little bit less, because when you go by agent, literally every time you zoom into the map, it's pulling all that data who's sold in that overall map view. I like to start by market center. And then what I want to do is I'm going to go look for New York. And there's New York. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can just see the market center. So, all right, there's one over here, Hoboken, Jersey City. There's one here, Lower Manhattan. So I'm going to click on that office. And I can see that there's 1,800 agents. Oh, no, 719. Just give it a second. So the 719 agents in this office, I want to see who those agents are. I have this little arrow right here. It's going to push out a menu. Now I can see who all 719 are. Now, obviously, I got to condense this down. So you can filter up here, hit filter, and you can filter based on certain things. So maybe you want an agent who in the last 12 months has closed maybe, let's say 10 deals. I want 10 deals or more already closed. Let's apply that filter. And that list of 719 agents now just went to 74 agents who have actually closed 10 deals in the last 12 months. It's always gonna be a rolling 12 months.
But some work on teams, they wouldn't actually show.
It won't. Yep. So great question. If the McCloskey team is an example, let's use him. If I click on the McCloskey team and I actually click the McCloskey team, actually it is just him in this case. So only one agent on the McCloskey team. If I wanted to see what the Fusion team. So the Fusion team, here are the agents on that team. The reason that's important is because on teams, generally speaking, the production always goes through the team owner. So you're right, I might not run into Carlos, but now this is how I would, see Carlos. I really don't get into that nitty-gritty. I want to see who's the top producer. If it's a team or an individual, to me, it's who's closing those deals. So right now there's 10 individuals or 74 individuals, whether they're solo agents or a team owner who are selling more than 74 listings, or more than 10 listings in the last 12 months. Maybe I want to filter also by languages spoken. So maybe I have a Spanish speaking customer, right? And I want to apply that filter. 8 of those are Spanish speaking agents. Now I'm really starting to narrow down my list of who I want to call to maybe connect with to build my referral partner or to send my referral to. So let's say I want to check out Alan here. I hit this little arrow. So there's Alan's, so the team's name is the Big Key Team. There's his phone number, there's his email. He speaks English, Russian, and Spanish. That's awesome. The team has 48 closed units, 4 of them listing, 44 buy side. So I would be okay sending him a buyer for sure. 42 leases. I know there's a lot of that up there, and then for a volume of 7.2 million. And I can then at that point decide. So remember earlier I talked about adding them as a friend. That's what that button is right there. You can click that button, send a little personalized message back to the point earlier we would send them. This is where you would send that message, hit send invitation. Again, I don't do that anymore. So it's kind of, I think, a waste of time because my intent is just to put them on my email marketing list. So when I get to this screen here, I'm going off track a little bit. Now we've already found the partner. Nikolai is going to be who we're going to send them to. We've called Nikolai, say, yes, I think you would be a great person for my buyer. Let me go ahead and let's get the referral form together. Once it's executed, we'll go ahead and I'll share the contact information for them. We're done. While we're here, go ahead.
That number makes sense to you just as a side. You're saying 7.5 million on that many sales.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of leases. I mean, I don't know what his average price point is or what he's doing. I mean, it's probably a lot of, well, you know, he's this agent, this is a different agent now, but this agent's 43 million in production. I mean, yeah, it seems weird a little bit if you think about it, assuming that he's selling. I mean, New York's expensive, so I don't know what they're selling. But this is where you can call them and kind of just get to know them a little bit, their production, what they do. And again, their goal is to make sure they're a good fit for your customer. So we've now found a referral partner in New York, but let me just kind of backtrack now so that you can figure out who to start networking with if you're going to leverage Command for that purpose. So let me just refresh everything. Refreshed everything. And now what I want to do, so I don't know if you guys saw this on this drop down. I'll be right at 10:30, Jeff. Remember, we can search by production, we can search by market center, and we can search by my network. There's another button there. If you guys notice there, it's called referral patterns. When I click on referral patterns, it's going to automatically default to Naples. I feel like when Jeff closes, I know it's the door, but like, is he mad or something? I'm going to move this bar down. Like, Jeff, are you mad? It defaults to Naples. That's where I am. And right now it's defaulted to where referrals are being sent to.
Okay.
Hence the little bluish tick there. This one's grayed out. So I can see here, hit control and zoom in. I can see that we're sending referrals East Coast. We got people moving to Sarasota, Clearwater, Tampa, Orlando. Go out a little bit further, Georgia, Carolinas, Michigan, New York. That's where we're sending referrals to.
Like our marketplace only, or what is that?
Our agents.
And each one of those is relative to how many, 1 or 10?
Over here, it's only as good as how much data is. I don't know what the minimum data needs, but for example, it's saying that of all the referrals in the top 20 referral sources, most of them are going to Sarasota. I don't know why we're sending them to Fort Myers. Go serve it, guys. I know why, actually. I think it's because we have an agent that's here, but they also have a team in Fort Myers and businesses ran through that. So I think that's why that data is there. Here's the reality. Lee and Collier County, I'm not adding agents from Lee or Collier County. I would be adding agents from other areas because if you remember here, it said Miami was a place we're sending referrals to. I don't really care about that data. I want to know where people are moving from.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to the received, and now I can see, well, no wonder I have a lot of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm agents, Tampa. And then as I zoom out, I can see some of the other cities and states where people are coming from.
This is insane.
The data, honestly, I'm not a tech guy to be able to tell you the coding behind all that. Here's what I know. That's where people are moving from, and that's where I'm going to market myself.
Yep.
Outside of this area. I'll give you an example. Like when I would do Facebook ads for myself, I would do local ads and it wasn't getting a lot of hits. How many realtors are doing local ads just listed? But when I took an ad, when I shot a video of a new community, a new construction community, for example, and I did that ad in Chicago, which Chicago typically does show up as one of the cities people are coming from, did that generate a lot of interest? Yeah. It was like a teaser. It was like golf courses, it was beaches, it was all the stuff that somebody in the north in the cold winter probably wants to see more of. So it was easier to get people to lock in and inquire on those ads. But so yes, it's going to help me with where I could do ads, but I'm using this to figure out where I want to connect with people. So on paper, I'm just writing down pretty much, hey, from Daytona down to Key West, I'm going to put down. I'm going to put so Vegas, I'm going to put Phoenix, Arizona. Like I'm going to start kind of writing these bigger ones. And then what I'm going to do is I'm gonna just start in Florida as the example, so let me stay here in Florida. Now, I'm gonna go, now that I have my list of cities, I'm going to go ahead and click market centers. Back to that again, zooming in that area, and what I did is I literally started down south, click the list of agents, there's 89 agents here, I probably would add all 89 in that case. And I just went through, and generally speaking, I like to add at least people that have like one deal in the last 12 months. I mean, at least they're somewhat doing something. Because I mean, when you get to a list of like the New York one where it's 700 agents, I mean, it's up to you. You could add all 700, or you can add the ones that are producing. Your call on how to do that. I do at least put one deal or more closed. And then what I do is I have two screens going, two monitors. And I'm copying and pasting Mike into his name, phone number in, email in, and then after Mike Carone, now with my new system, I'm gonna put Key West at the end of Mike's name.
So you're taking their information from there, going into contacts, adding it in
Literally have two windows going,
at the
and
same
I'm just
time.
geeking out.
Yeah,
Now,
Before.
nope, nope,
But you still put Met as a tag until they respond back to you.
correct. I'm just putting the A2A referral program tag that triggers this to happen. The email campaigns. Here's what I'm gonna say. I think the reason most agents don't do this is because when I mean, even explaining it, it's time consuming if you think about it. I did start doing it, but eventually, I mean, obviously, once I had her hire an assistant, who's here that knows my old, no one's here that knows my old assistant, but he's literally sat in the office, and I was like, and when he was physically here, when he first started for me, I said, I need you to add 200 a week because we need to ramp this up fast. So we were for the first couple of weeks adding 200 at a time every single week and automatically putting them on that plan so that we can get this going. And I'm glad we did, because in the first week we got a deal there, Island Walk, I think it was like 445 at that time for a little villa. So any questions on that? I'm going to show you just some video ideas and then we'll wrap.
So then you get referral or?
Yeah, I got a referral from the email marketing. And I offer a 30% referral fee. First off, it stands out compared to 25% because that's kind of the norm, if you will, that most people send out. And the reality is this, my goal was always to cap as fast as possible. I've always said this company is not for somebody who doesn't want to be a capper. If you're not wanting to do more than $3 million in production, I guess it's on camera, it's not the place for you. That's just the way I look at it. At least you have to have the desire to want to make more than that. So for me, the goal is to cap as fast as possible. And the reality is this, these deals help them cap fast. Because also for me at the time, when I started, my database was buying, and remember, market was different in 2017, but my database at that time, unfortunately, was buying $150,000 condos, $250,000 homes in Lehigh and Cape Coral. It took a lot of deals to do what today you can do probably 2 or 3 deals. Right? So one of the ways I rose my price point is by having higher quality or higher price point customers, which came a lot of it from referrals actually, and other sources. But that was one of the methods that I started getting to higher price points. Yeah.
So, 30% off of your 3% commission.
Yeah, I would offer, because there's a thing, I've capped, and all day, you know, even when I cap, I don't go spend the money. And by the way, don't go spend your money, the 30%, either put it back into your business or invest into something, do something with it, but don't spend it. Many of us are spending it. For me, I was gladly willing to give the 30% to somebody who sent me a piece of business. It would suck at first when I wasn't capped and I reset, but the reality is that business would have not been there.
Right.
Not for that KW agent. So my goal for caps fast as possible. This is one of the methods to do that. Now, I only got 6 minutes. I want to at least talk, and I want to give you guys the break before Jeff comes in. One more question here, and then I want to show you one other thing.
So this lines back and forth to and from, is there an international aspect of that also?
I imagine there is, but there's not a lot of data. I think it's just because there's not enough data tracking, like, hey, from the Dominican Republic here, but here's what I know. And I haven't started this yet, but like, I'm from the Dominican Republic, and I just realized we're starting to build more of a presence down there. I'm going to start adding all my Dominican agents as an example. And you guys can go wherever you want in the world.
Not necessarily internal to KW.
They're KW.
But you can't necessarily have someone that's with, say, Remax or whatever.
Oh, no. Well, and I guess if you go find their information, there was I had a business partner who she had, and I still have them in there. She had a database of agents in Chicago, but with 2 other brokerages. I took that list and I just give her a referral fee for anything I close from there. Again, the goal for me was to add as many lead sources as I can. For example, what is it, Valencia? I want to go international with this. Looks like 58 agents in that office. I'm probably going to add all 58 at this point. I don't even care about production. I don't know what the real estate business is like out there. So I'm going to just take all 58 and start marketing to them. Put these emails into command and start email marketing to them as well. Now the messaging to this group is probably going to be a little different. So I probably, if I were to do this, I'm going to edit my plan a little bit. Last thing I'm going to show you then is kind of what was going out to hopefully spark an idea. Give you some examples of some of the videos. We're not going to watch all videos. I just wanted you to see bits of it. So So when I started this, the first email was this video. Probably only have time to really show you one.
No, you do, it's 3.
Huh?
It's only 3.
We'll all have the whole thing. I don't know, intro. You guys know what page is gonna go call it my top page. You know that thing when I'm out the boat with her. We got a charter with a buddy of mine. That's my daughter's cousin. So I always try to be strategic about when I'm playing. Try to take videos. Hello, realtor friends and future friends. Some of you I already had the pleasure of meeting, and others I hope to meet here soon. My name is Jordas Reyes. I run the Pro Scout group here at Keller Williams Realty of Naples, and you and I have been connected either on Facebook or the Keller Williams Referral Network, and I wanted to take this time to send you this video so that we can begin to build a better relationship and a better referral partnership. My team and I, we serve the Southwest Florida area, Lee and Collier County, which consists of Naples, Marco Island, Bonita Springs, Estero, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, and Lehigh Acres. I have been living here in beautiful Southwest Florida since 1998, and I feel blessed to call this beautiful place home. With me today, I have my beautiful daughter Gianna and our little friend. She's running around here somewhere. She's a little camera shy right now, and we're just cruising down the Caloosahatchee River. Gianna, say hello to everybody. Hi. My wife Ashley could not make it today, but she sends her hellos to you as well. I hope that wherever you are, you and your loved ones are doing well, and that your business is thriving. I would love to continue staying connected with you and then closing it out. And I just say here's Southwest Florida, and I just clip together stuff from when I go out boating.
You embedded that into your.
It's on you. I upload it to YouTube and I embed that into the email that I sent to them. Correct. And then over time, I started doing other smaller videos of like kind of getting to know them. So like this one talks for a minute about the importance of customer experience and. Reyes with Keller Williams Realty in Naples, Florida. I service the Southwest Florida market between Lee and Collier County. As an instructor for Florida Educational Services, one of the big classes I teach is called Customer Experience. Now, customer experience is the customer's perception of all the interactions that. And then connecting it back to them. Weird watching stuff. So these emails, some of them, I think of 7 emails, I think 4 of them had videos. The other one was just general text. So what I would recommend if you're going to work this plan is to create at least a first intro video if that's something you want to do. And then the next 2 can just be text emails or text bodied emails. They don't have to necessarily have a video until you come up with the rest of your campaign. So again, if you do this, you're gonna get referrals from it, period. Wow. All right, that's it, guys. So I'll take a 5-minute break. I'll hang out right here while you're on break so I can answer questions. Oh, yeah, let me, if you guys want to hang around, take your break, because again, I want to get Jeff back here. I'm just gonna go over the contact neighborhood again, if you missed that last, on Monday. So when you're in your contacts, when you're in contact, let me just pull up Aaron, somebody that I use as a test. So, Breeze, come on. Aaron's not popping up right now because I gotta remove the filter. Aaron is somebody, he's one of my meds. Why is this thing being- All right, so Aaron Harder, I'm gonna use him, he's my guinea pig. When people go on that monthly smart plan, they're gonna get an email that is neighborhood information. So when they click the email, make sure this is what you want to do. Okay. No, you want to know how to activate it. Is that what it was?
That's something you have to give them, let's say, monthly
Yep.
updates on that.
Gotcha. So in order for Aaron to get the monthly neighborhood information, I have to either have Aaron's email as his home address in there, which is going to be always marked as the primary, and it'll auto populate his neighborhood. If for some reason I didn't have his home address, which then at that point I'm making up what neighborhood I'm going to send him, or maybe I have a rough idea where he lives, I can manually just hit add neighborhood. I'm gonna find on map, and then I'm gonna pop an address in. I always just kind of been using my neighborhood. So let me, sorry, this mouse is really acting up right now. I can zoom in on whatever neighborhood I want to add for him. Let's say it was gonna be Fort Myers Shores. I can click that neighborhood, scroll down and hit save. And now it's not only subscribed him for his Pine Ankle ranches, but now it's also subscribed him for Fort Myers Shores. Now there's one other step that has to happen. We have to activate the smart plan. I use him as a guinea pig because I don't have his email in there. So I can hit add to smart plan. And now here where I can see I have my biweekly added to my database, and then all the way at the bottom I have the one that's my monthly nurture, and there we go, my monthly neighborhood nurture. It won't let me add him because I don't have an email for him. But that's how I would activate that plan.
So when I do a group.
Yes, you absolutely can. So assuming that you already have the addresses for people, remember the bulk action where we selected multiple people? And then at the top, you would just hit bulk action. And in this case, the bulk action, let's say, for example, these two errands I wanted to put on it. Selected both, select bulk action, add to smart plan, and then go find the smart plan I want to add there. All right, guys, go take a break. I'll give you an extra 5. So let's everybody please be back in the seat by 10:40 so I can give Jeff enough time to hit his piece. 10:40.
All right. A tough act to follow, Jordas, but I'm gonna try. I think most of you were here the other day. I'm broker Jeff. If you don't have my card, I'll give it to you. I only work on the days that end in Y because I know you work all the days that end in Y. And I want you to be able to call me if you have a problem rather than say, yeah, I don't want to bother you. So anyhow, I'll try to be here to support you. I have been doing this for quite a while, and I get up every morning, and my big why is to help people to be successful. And I've had a little bit of success with that. Even Jordas listens to me once in a while when he calls, don't you?
Yeah.
He's listening right now.
Anyhow, so we did the neighbor contract on Monday, and I think most of you were in here for that. Okay, so I won't spend a lot of time back on that, but I did want to talk a little bit about Farbar today. And there are big differences between the two contracts, which we'll try to cover today. I know that we spent most of the time Monday talking about inspections. And again, the same thing is true with this contract. The difference between the as-is contract and the regular contract is strictly the inspection provisions. So I want to go back over this slide that I brought up to you on Monday, and I want to talk a little bit about the as-is contract before we go into too much detail. All right, so it's especially in Lee County, the as-is contract is the most popular contract. It's what for a while there was used almost exclusively. Again, I think I talked a little bit on Monday about the fact that I'm not a fan of as-is contracts. They came into vogue back during the distressed property days, And I think I told you my timing wasn't so good. I got in 2007 when everything was crashing. And when lenders and investors were owning properties that they knew nothing about. So when they went to sell them, they said, hey, you know, take it as is where it is, because I don't know anything about it. It's a financial transaction for me. And if you want to do any repairs or make any changes, your buyer's going to do those at their own expense. And that was and there was usually the bank had another addendum on there that was another 20 pages of the buyer signing their life away, so that the lender had no culpability at all. So everybody loved the due diligence period. And there are entire brokerages that say write an as-is contract and then negotiate. I'm not a fan, never have been. I thought it was okay when I was doing short sales and foreclosures, because, you know, the lender had no idea what was there. So really there was no negotiation. It was pretty much take it or leave it. Occasionally, if the air conditioner, if you were out in the estates, you realize that either the air conditioner or all the copper in it had been pilfered by people because they knew the home was abandoned. So we were able to get a little bit of work done with the bank sometimes in credit to replace an air conditioner or repair an air conditioner. But if you saw any of those homes, you realize that this was truly a distressed time. These were abandoned properties. People would take out, they were mad at the bank for lending them the money, was the mentality. You know, I'm going to take the cabinets, I'm going to take the appliances, I'm going to take all kinds of things that don't belong to me. So that was the birth of the as-is contract. But because of the due diligence period, everybody went, well, that's wonderful. You mean I can walk away for any reason or no reason in the due diligence period? Oh, that's awesome. It's not really awesome. It's not good for the buyer, not good for the seller. But again, we need to learn this contract and we need to be able to present it to a seller if we're a listing agent. And there are times when a buyer insists because of their financial condition or whatever of using the as-is contract. But I want to hopefully by the end of today, I'll convince you that if given a choice, you're much better off with the regular contract. Okay. So in the as-is contract, the seller has no obligation for any repairs and credits, supposedly. The paragraph in the as-is contract that replaces the inspection paragraph in the regular contract basically says that the buyer has X amount of days to determine whether the property is acceptable to them as is, and they can walk away for any reason or no reason, which is the attractiveness of the as-is contract. However, if you're a seller, I would say 90% of the time the buyer is going to come back to the seller and ask for something. I mean, there are whole people that say I go in full price cash and then I negotiate, because there is no rules, there's no governance, there's no defective versus cosmetic, there's nothing other than we originally agreed to take the property as is, but now all of these contracts for the most part have become as is, except. So a buyer then has the right to inspect the property, and prior to the end of the inspection period can go to the seller with an amendment and say, I want a credit, I want you to fix this, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. And there's no standard for what goes in that amendment, right? It's not defective versus cosmetic, it's whatever the buyer asks for. And if they're asking for a credit of $15,000, there's no requirement that they provide any type of estimate, they just ask for the credit. If the seller accepts the amendment and returns it to the buyer prior to the end of the due diligence period, the contract is modified. If the seller doesn't respond by the end of the due diligence period, the buyer has to make a decision. Do I cancel and move on, or do I accept the property the way it is? If you have a good relationship with a listing agent that you've established, and we'll talk a little bit about listing contracts on Monday, but always, 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 if you're writing a contract for a buyer, call the listing agent before you do anything. You need to know what the story is. You need to establish rapport with the listing agent, because it's the two of you that are going to get it to the closing table. Okay. And what happens if it doesn't get to the closing table? Not much, right? The only way we get paid is to establish good relationships with the listing agent and get the contract to the closing table, regardless of the circumstances. That's the way we get paid, and we're unemployed until we do that, right? So understand that this is a process, that it should be done in good faith, that it should be done representing your buyer or your seller to the best of your ability. And if you can do that and you have a pleasurable experience, now you're able to get a referral or another piece of business from that same buyer or seller. And that's our 401k real estate, right? There's no pensions, there's no guarantees. It's people that know, like, and trust you that'll do business with you again or recommend you to somebody else to do business with you. So the knowledge of this contract is the heart of your relationship with your customer. It's a bunch of legalese. It's 12 or 13, oh, it's up to 14 pages now. But understanding it and being able to use the tools in there will make you much, much more successful than the majority of your peers who think that DocuSign and .loop are the answer to all contract negotiations. I send it to you, you sign it, I send it over, and we're done, right? Until something goes wrong or until the buyer doesn't realize some of the things that are in this contract and or the seller. So your understanding of this contract, the reason that it's in your hand in print is because I don't care about technology at this point. I want you to learn the contract. I want you to know what's in it. I want you to be able to read it. I want you to be able to explain it to a buyer or seller before any ink goes on here. So early on in your relationship with a seller, you want to go over the contract. You want them to understand it. So when it comes in, it's not all Greek. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between these two contracts. All right, so I said the seller has no obligation for any repairs or credits. So if I'm the buyer and I do an inspection and the inspector tells me that the air conditioner is not working or it's not cooling to the level that it should cool, that's a defective condition. Even though there's no defective and cosmetic in the as-is contract, now that I've notified the seller that you have a defective air conditioner, do you as the agent and the seller have to disclose that to the next buyer?
Yes.
So the catch-22 of this no obligation for any repairs and credits is if you now are informed of a defect or a leak in the roof or something that materially affects the value of the house, now you're required to disclose that to the next buyer. So when the seller tells you, I don't care, I'm not making any repairs, send them on their way, and a new contract comes in, do you have an obligation as an agent to disclose that to the next buyer?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, you do. Okay. So there's a little bit of a catch-22 in the as-is contract in that if the buyer does request the seller address a defective item, it's sometimes more practicable for the seller to say, I'll fix the air conditioner rather than I'll send this buyer packing and I'll face the same issue, or maybe they won't catch me. But if they don't catch me and I knew about it and I didn't disclose it, do I have some liability? Absolutely, you have liability as an agent, and so does your seller. So keep that in mind.
If the air conditioning isn't working, where in here that we disclose that?
You send an amendment over. In the case of FAR there are no amendments, they're all addendums, but you send over a document and you send it over during the due diligence period and you say, buyer requests that seller have the air conditioner repaired or replaced to meet specifications. Send that over to the listing agent, the seller signs it, sends it back, then that becomes part of the contract.
Does it have to be fixed during the due diligence period, or?
It has to be done prior to the end of the due diligence period, or the due diligence period needs to be extended by mutual agreements of the parties. If it's not done by the end of the due diligence period and the buyer doesn't cancel, the buyer is accepting that air conditioner in whatever condition it was in. That's the nature of the as-is contract. Okay. So must have a signed amendment. In the case of NABOR, it's an amendment. In the case of FAR, it's an addendum because they don't have any amendments. But all you're basically sending over to the other side is a request for a repair, a credit. Hopefully you send the inspection report. You're not required to do anything in an as-is contract, which is why I don't like it. There's no conventions, there's no rules, there's no right or wrong. It's like the wild, wild west. I've had people ask for a pool to be resurfaced. Is the pool leaking? So, but you know, again, you can ask for anything you want. And if the seller agrees to it, then it becomes part of your contract. All right. You'll notice You can flip to the, if you want to flip to the last page of your, second to last page of your as-is contract, you notice that I've added into additional terms. Property is to be conveyed without any open or expired permits, municipal liens, or code violations prior to closing. Remember, I gave you that verbiage for the neighbor contract on Monday. I actually put it into this document, so you wouldn't have to remember it, right? The as-is contract does generally not help the buyer to discover whether there are open expired permits, liens, or code violations, because those generally are not found out until you go to contract. The closing agent does what's called a municipal lien search. In the municipal lien search, any open or expired permits, code violations, or liens are discovered during that period. Does it happen during your due diligence period? Rarely. Here's what's happened to due diligence periods. They default to 15 days in the contract, but I don't think I've seen a contract with more than 10 in a long time. I've seen 7, I've seen 5, I've seen 3. How in the world do you do due diligence in 3 days? So I think you have to be careful when you're negotiating that if somebody says, well, I'm not going to give you 15 days, I'll give you 10 days. 10 days, okay, I can get an inspector out there, I can get a report back, I can get some quotes from professionals as to what's it's going to take to address these issues, right? But if you give me 5 days or 3 days, there's no chance. Remember, if I find something, I got to ask the seller, and the seller's got to get it back during that due diligence period, or else I have to cancel. So again, in the neighbor and FAR standard contract, there is a documented procedure. It uses intelligent thinking. It uses back and forth between the buyer and the seller, and it tries to do much more to keep the contract together and to keep the spirit of cooperation between the parties. Okay. There's no differentiation in an as-is contract as whether it's defective or cosmetic. And in both the neighbor and FAR contract, there's a very strict definition of what's defective and what's cosmetic. And if it's cosmetic and the buyer asks you for it, you can say, sorry, this isn't a brand new house. It has some wear and tear, it needs some caulking. It's got a torn screen, got a missing screen. All of those things are excluded as cosmetic conditions in the contracts. So if you want some, I see a lot more of these of the regular FAR contract coming through, which I think is a sign that people are weary of the back and forth in an as-is contract, and they've had too many bad experiences where the buyers had to walk away, or they haven't gotten the repairs they wanted. Even if the seller agrees to do the repair, do they have to use a licensed contractor? Show me in there where it says anything about using licensed contractors or providing receipts, or I'll do it myself. Joe, I can fix that air conditioner. I'll go on YouTube. YouTube will tell me how to fix that. So I'll go on YouTube and now fix the air conditioner. Now you move in 2 days later. What do you say? You have any recourse? You don't. So the seller can do the repairs that you ask for them to do in any way they want. They can do them themselves. They can do them as inexpensively as possible. There is no governance to repairs or credits in the as-is contract.
And I just had something real, it's funny, not funny, but just to prove that point. I was on the listing side one time, and as-is contract, they made a request, and I'm like, we're already giving them furniture, but nonetheless, the seller didn't want to lose the deal. One of the items was that there used to be at some point in the past an active leak under the sink, so it rotted the wood. So one of the things they requested was to have it fixed. He literally just had a little cheap piece of wood cut out to the shape of it, put it on top of it, said it's fixed. They accepted it.
Yep.
To the point, it was an as-is contract.
So the more you take contract classes from me, the more you'll say, there's no real reason for me to use an as-is contract. I'm a professional. I know what this contract does. I know what it says. And the best possible way I can take care of my buyer or seller is a normal contract with normal defined back and forth so that we stay together. We don't hate each other at the closing table. And that's why I don't like as-is contracts. So
This is an as-is
the as-is, you have the as-is and the regular. You should have 2 contracts in there. The first, pages are the as is, and then behind that's the regular. You can take it and put it in 2 piles if you want.
So Jeff, just maybe part of the this part, so who decides, is there a negotiation between the, listing agent who decides as is the regular, who negotiates that?
So that's your decision representing the buyer as to what type of contract that you want to use. There are many people in the MLS who love as is contracts, say that the seller will only accept an as is contract. If that's in writing from the seller, great. Only one time in all of my calls back and forth to a listing agent, did the listing agent say, I have it in writing from the seller that all they want is an as is contract. Listing agents love as is contracts, right? They don't have to do anything, just present it to the seller, present it to the seller. I think that a well-trained, knowledgeable agent would almost always rather use a regular contract. But that doesn't mean that you're going to run into a lot of well-trained, knowledgeable people out there that are looking to get the best possible result for their buyer or seller.
Quick question. If in the, at closing, you find out that the seller had known that the air conditioning was defective, what recourse does the buyer have after closing with either contract, Zippo?
You accepted the property as is. On the other contract, yeah, there's a requirement but it's up to your inspector and everything to find that stuff out and present it to the seller. You don't present it, and it's never discussed. It's very difficult to hire a litigating attorney, initial deposit $15,000 to prove a point. Maybe I should just replace the air conditioner and move on. So remember that even though the contract gives both parties equal rights, and even though there's a default provision in all these contracts that allows the buyer and the seller to go at loggerheads with each other, it's very expensive. And, you know, I've had an attorney say to me, if the deposit isn't at least $100,000, it doesn't make sense for the buyer or the seller to chase the deposit because the cost and time to do it, there has to be an egregious situation and you have to have a good litigating attorney. So forget all that. What we're trying to do is establish a relationship between the buyer and the seller and the listing agent, the buyer's agent, so that we get the deal done, right? That's why we're in this business, is to help people. If you're in it for the money, there's the door. Really. You're in it to help people and help them to realize their dreams and their goals and their objectives and stay in the room. If you're in it for the money, the buyer or seller will see it in a heartbeat. Seriously. So how many of you are new agents? Okay. So as of 10:57 or whatever it is, you're no longer new agents.
Yes.
You're being equipped with the tools, and Jordas and I are pouring into you so that you will, at the end of our boot camp, have more skills and more tools and more understanding than 75% of the agents out there. Would you say 75%? I mean, there's 8,000 agents in there. And what I used to call it when I was an agent was working both sides and getting paid for one. You can usually tell in the first phone call. What do you mean financing contingency? I don't know anything about that. Okay, so we're going to equip you with the tools to do well, to represent yourself and your company, and to build your business through referrals and through positive experiences with customers. Right? We don't sell stuff, we help people. That's why you're here, and that's why you're here to learn. And there's plenty of resources here. If you plug in to our classes and our training, there's plenty of resources for you to become a very skilled and adept agent. And to have more skills and more tools than 75–80% of the other people out there. Even though there's 8,000 agents in the Naples MLS, how many of them do you think have logged into MLS in the last 3 months?
10%.
2,000, 3,000? How many of you think that have written a contract in the last year?
5.
So You've heard of Pareto's law, the 80-20 theory.
Yeah.
It's 90-10 or more.
What?
That 90 to 95% of the business is done by 5 to 10% of the agents. So what does that mean? It means that there's opportunity out there, even though there's a lot of agents and a lot of peeps. This market is not for you to stick a sign in the ground and get 15 phone calls and sell it and go on to the next one. This market is a skill-based market. You have to work at it. You have to be willing to get on the phone. You have to be willing to work at it. And then you can make a good living. There's still plenty of opportunity out there in this market, despite the number of agents that are out there. So how many of you are new agents? Good. None.
Getting smarter.
Forget the word, all right? Repairs and credits in both the regular NABOR and regular FAR contract. If you want a credit, you go to a licensed contractor, you get an estimate from them, and you put that back to the seller and say, I'd like a credit for $2,500 or $4,000 for radon mitigation. Okay, now the seller has can the seller go and get another estimate? Sure.
Yeah.
But everything is based on somebody that knows what they're doing, putting a number on a piece of paper and saying, this is why I'd like the credit. The NABOR contract has the buyer's election and seller's response document, which, by the way, you can never use for an as-is contract for any reason or for a FAR contract. But it's a nice little piece of paper that says, hey, I'm the buyer and I have done my inspection, and here's a complete copy of the inspection report, and here are my requests. All right. In FAR, it's not quite as established, but it does require you to provide a complete copy of the inspection report to the seller, along with your request for repairs. If there's a credit requested, there needs to be an accompanying document that supports the amount of that credit. It can't just be, there's a lot of little stuff going on here. I want a $5,000 credit. I see it a lot in the NABOR contract where a buyer's asking for a credit and they don't provide any. It's just like, well, I got to get a new refrigerator. I got to replace this. Give me 10,000. Nope, that's not the way it works. In an as-is contract, can you do that? Absolutely. Will the seller buy it? I don't know. If you're asking the seller to do repairs, will the seller do them in an intelligent way, or will the seller find the path of least resistance? I don't know, but I don't know that you have any control over that as a buyer in an as-is contract. So the bottom line is as-is contracts best for the buyer or seller? I could make a case that not. I mean, you come to a seller and says, as is, I don't have to do anything. Set the expectations. You will be asked to do something. And if for some reason not, it's a home run. But 9 out of 10 times you're going to get something. And maybe 6 or 7 of those aren't going to make any sense to anybody. I just want $10,000. I want 20,000 off the purchase price. This place is a mess. Oh, great, thank you. Appreciate that. So again, first thing you want to do is to establish rapport with the listing agent if you're representing a buyer. You want to make a phone call. You want to be kind. You want to take time to ask the listing agent, do you have any other offers? Oh, okay, great. And if you do, can you tell me a little bit about them? And we'll talk in the listing contract at your discussion as a listing agent with the seller. You're going to discuss with the seller what information you can provide. And typically the more information you can provide as a listing agent to a buyer's agent, the better the quality of the contract that's going to come in as a result of that conversation. Okay. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
A lot of the work is before you even start the contract.
Right.
Of the understanding of what when they want to close, what's the circumstance. They're not obligated to tell you, but I think can't hurt to ask.
The worst they could say is, no, I can't share that with you. And in that conversation, do you kind of get a feel for how the transaction is going to go if you submit a contract? So that conversation, that communication between you and the listing agent is the key to a successful contract. The words are helpful, but the communication is what's going to get it done. So although the difference between these two contracts is strictly the inspection paragraph, there's a huge night and day philosophical difference between the two. And I think the important thing for you to understand is we're here to help our customer. And by the way, we have customers because we're transaction brokers. We don't have clients. I think a lot of people like to use the word client because it makes them seem like they're a doctor or a lawyer. It's just a fiduciary relationship. We really only have a couple of people that act as single agents. They've been doing it for years. It's a very difficult and complex relationship that you have. We generally don't allow you to act as a single agent unless there's peculiar circumstances. We have had some people come from the Midwest where they're used to single agency, right? And they demand that they be represented as a single agent. We have a couple of agents that can do that or can help you with it, but for the most part, you're a transaction broker and these are your customers, okay? So when somebody calls me and says, I'm working with my client, I'm like, oh, you're a single agent? No, I'm a transaction broker. Is there any, we've asked, is there any liability to refer to your customer as a client? Probably not. But if it was to get into a legal back and forth, then you're kind of implying that you have a fiduciary relationship with that customer and that in a single agent relationship, not to go into a lot of details, the client is responsible for your actions. So if you go out and do something wacky, it's the client's responsibility. That's why lawyers have clients and we have customers. Right, okay.
Jeff, I'm sorry, quick, on new builds, would you ever use it as is brand new?
Okay, so typically on a new build contract, you'll have a builder's contract to deal with, especially the track builders, Lennar, Centex, all the people out there that
Warranties.
they will send you a contract like this, and it's all about the builder. There's nothing really good in there but I've had customers say, I'm sending this to my lawyer. And I say, well, save yourself $300 or $400 because they're going to come back and say, you either sign it or you don't get the house. There's not a lot of give and take in a builder's contract. It's all about the builder. It protects the builder.
My house, was like that. Yeah, I said I purchased my home from a builder. It was the same way a few months ago.
Isn't the buyer paid the doc stamps and?
The buyer pays the doc stamps oftentimes in a new build contract because the seller's pretty much paying everything else.
Yeah.
But all of this, again, remember, this is a document that can be negotiated. And we'll talk a little bit about title and whether or not it's better for the buyer to purchase their own title and be represented by their own closing agent. There's a lot of things that can go in there, I think, best practices that not always covered by the contract, but there are contracts that come in, especially, and if you have a small builder that doesn't have a contract, there's some language we can give you that basically says there's an effective date of every contract, right? What's the effective date? The effective date is the last time or date that a buyer is either initialed or signed a contract by our seller. So make sure if you have changes to a contract that your customer always initials and dates the changes. If they just initial them and you originally agreed on, except a few changes 5 days ago, you could lose 4 or 5 days on your effective date. And if your inspection period is short, that's a problem. So make sure that the effective date of the contract is when you have a meeting in the minds, and the meeting in the mind says this is the last date that anybody has either initialed or signed the contract. And I like to say, as a best practice, always have your customer, if they're initialing a change, put a date next to it, because that can affect your effective date. And the effective date is always day 0. The effective date is day 0. Repeat after me. The effective date is day 0. That's in there, hopefully, because I get a lot of calls. Got a 10-day inspection period. How'd you count it? Oh, okay, you still have 2 more days. If everything in both of these contracts is counted in calendar days from the effective date, day 0, to the end of the due diligence period, deposit date, whatever date's in the contract, that's how you determine when a due date is. If it falls on a weekend, a federal holiday, or the observance of a federal holiday, everything in both contracts reverts to the next business day at midnight. So it's not a bad idea when you look at your dates here to make sure they all work out so they don't end on a Friday or a Saturday or or Labor Day weekend. But if they do, you're protected to the date being automatically extended to the first business day after the holiday or the weekend, okay? So let's talk a little bit about, I'm gonna spend my time here mainly going through the regular contract, if you got two piles there. There are identical contracts with the exception of the inspection paragraph, which we've talked about, and that nice little sentence that I've given you in the back that protects your buyer in an as-is contract from inheriting open expired permits or liens or code violations that don't get discovered until after the end of your due diligence period. Okay. So in the FAR contract, I'll try to compare and contrast the differences, but in the FAR contract, all time periods are time of the essence. We talked about time of the essence on Monday. Time of the essence means that if you go beyond that date, whoever's obligation it was to perform on that date is in default. So if I'm supposed to make my initial deposit in 3 days and I'm on day 4, I'm in default. And in the FAR contract, all deposits, whether they've been made or not, are eligible to the seller if the buyer defaults and doesn't make the deposit. So again, in NABOR, it's only the deposits made to date. In the FAR, all deposits, whether they've been made or not, are eligible to the seller in the case of buyer default. So make sure you understand your dates, make sure you understand the differences between what's time of the essence and what's in a NABOR contract. The only time of the essence date is the closing date. If a buyer were to miss a deposit, are they in default in the NABOR contract? The answer is no. If it's extended, the seller can say, I'll give you to Friday close of business, otherwise you're in default. So you can always take a date in the NABOR contract and make it time of the essence, but you have to physically notify the other side. In FAR, too bad, so sad, you miss it, you're done.
And just to confirm, NABOR, Collier County, FAR, Lee or something.
In general, yep, you see more NABOR contracts in Collier County than you do anywhere else. Can you use a NABOR contract anywhere in Florida? Yes. Do you see some NABOR contracts up in Benita, Estero? Yeah.
But FAR, you don't see Collier.
You don't see too many of them. A lot of people from Lee County love to write as-is contracts in FAR. So I would say the #1 contract used in the state is the FAR as-is. So whether you agree with it or not, you need to live with it and deal with it and understand it because it's still one of the more prevalent contracts that are used. I just want you to understand the goods and the bads.
Jeff, what is the definition of time of the essence?
Time of the essence basically says both parties must perform by that date, and any party that doesn't perform by that date is in default. Time is of the essence. I missed my deposit date. I missed the closing date. I missed an inspection date. All of those dates are time of the essence in the FAR contract. If I miss one, if I'm the seller or the buyer, I'm in default.
Any way to fix that if you very by a random chance miss it? I know it's not gonna happen, but what would happen if?
Well, I mean, again, we're going back to the relationship we established when we first started, right? Okay, I'm on a FAR contract. My buyer is on a cruise, can't make the deposit. Can I call the listing agent and say, hey, dude, our friends, we're trying to get this to the closing table. Can they make the deposit on Monday? Sure. Addendum,
would write it
deposit date is extended to Monday, done. Yeah, I mean, the whole point of a real estate transaction is, wouldn't you say, the communication between the agents? The better it is, the easier it is not to get into, oh, the contract says. You can work things out if you have good communication. That goes for a lot of the things that happen in this contract. Okay. So I'm going to probably go through this contract. We didn't get into the NABOR contract, but we will. But I'll go through the key provisions in this contract, and maybe you can take some notes if you'd like in the margins there. So we start. The best place to start is line 1. Remember, all contracts have to name the true owners of the property and in the form that they have titled it. How do I do that? I gotta go to the property appraiser, collierappraiser.com or lipa.org. And I'm gonna pull the deed to the property. And I'm gonna look at the deed and see who's on the deed. And I wanna look and see if it's a trust or an estate, or if it's two parties or one party. And that is what has to go on that contract. Otherwise, is that contract binding?
Yeah.
If there's a husband and wife and the husband's on this seller and the wife's not, it's a homestead problem. She's on the deed, she can say, this contract's not any good. Have we got them back with that? Usually it's a long lost cousin or uncle or somebody that's on the deed that raises their hand and said, sorry. So be careful with that and always start with the deed. If there's questions about the deed, might be a good idea to ask the listing agent when you have that conversation with them. Again, we're trying to do as much as we can before we write the contract. So when we write the contract, we don't have questions. So if there's a complicated situation on the deed, if there's an estate, if there's a trust, we need to find out who is the personal representative of the estate, who are the trustees. If it's an LLC, we can go to sunbiz.org. We can look at the LLC and see who the managing members are, but you have to make sure that that seller is correctly named and that whoever's signing for that is also has the capacity. You have to be a little bit careful in estate situations and with powers of attorney because they're not all valid in Florida. Okay, and remember that every property that's not in a trust in Florida has to go through probate in Florida. And just because the attorney's in Michigan and says, I got everything under control, doesn't mean the property doesn't have to be probated in Florida. It could take what, 2-3 months, sometimes or less. So understand that you need to get as much information as you can, even before you put ink to paper or electronically. All right. The buyer, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, Mr. Buyer, Ms. Buyer. How do you want to take title of this property? If you ask that question up front, maybe they're in a trust. Maybe they want to put it in an LLC. Maybe they want to do that. The best time to answer that question is when you're writing the contract, not 30 days in when they said, oh, we decided, we were going to put it in an LLC. If there's financing, will the lender like that? Probably not. So ask the buyer, well, how do you want to take title to this property? Again, the property description and all that stuff, where does that come from? We just went to lipa.org or call your appraiser. All that stuff is there. And when you get out into the estates, you can get legal descriptions that are a paragraph long. See attached legal description. So here's another area that's very important to understand and is very different between the NABOR and FAR-BAR contracts, okay? The FAR-BAR contract is very sparse when talking about things that are included in the way of real property and personal property. Can anybody look at paragraph D and tell me where the washer dryer is?
It's not me,
Not there, is it? In many contracts in many traditional neighborhoods in other markets, the refrigerator and the washer and dryer are personal items that the seller takes them with them, but not in this market. So what happens if you fail to put washer dryer on line 21 and you're going through the walkthrough and that beautiful Samsung washer and dryer is gone and there's hoses hanging down? And the buyer says to you, where's the washer and dryer? Oh, I'll be right back. I'm headed to Best Buy. Believe me, it's happening. The TV that was supposed to be there is not there. The bracket is a fixture, television mounting hardware. The TV is not. Okay, what model was there? Call the seller. What was the model number? Okay, I'm headed to Best Buy. That model discontinued. Let me get one that's current. Don't do it. So how many people in here are tennis players? A couple of you? What does love mean in tennis? Nothing? Zero? What does furnished mean in a contract? Same as love and tennis. What does turnkey mean? What does partially furnished mean? What does as shown mean? Same as love and tennis, nothing. You go to that walkthrough and you put furnished on line 21 and all the furniture is gone. Your buyer's gonna look at you and go, what happened to all the furniture? There are no words that you can put in there as per MLS is a beauty. What does it say at the bottom of every MLS listing? Buyer to independently verify any of the information on there, right? So per MLS, references to the MLS, references to your showing, references to turnkey, all that kind of stuff mean nothing. What means something is an inventory that's taken and it's signed off by both parties. So when I go to the walkthrough, I have my inventory, right? And I have my signatures. And if the painting on the wall that was supposed to be there isn't there, boom, we agreed on that painting. It's not there. Now I have traction. I have leverage. But without that inventory, not good. Yes.
So I understand washer and dryers usually conveyed, and we'll write it, we need to know to write that down, weirdly. But like TVs aren't normally assumed to go, like, right?
Well, why would?
The only thing that's assumed to go is the bracket, because the bracket's attached to the wall and the bracket's
Yeah.
fixed.
But
TV is not.
why would we have to add the TV in there? TVs don't get.
Did the buyer want the TV?
If they.
The buyer wants the TV.
But why would we, because it's in the pictures, or why would we?
They saw.
It basically anything
We would
in
have
the
to
personal
tell-
property nature that's on a piece of paper that's agreed to by all parties conveys at the sale.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk, when we talk about the listing contract, we're gonna talk about that initial conversation with your seller. What do you expect to be here on the day of closing?
Yeah.
And if it's, I'm taking my Ring doorbell, that's a fixture, it's screwed into the wall.
Yeah, and another TV might not
So,
attach to that picture.
Get in the habit of taking an inventory. There's forms in both, there's a neighbor personal property inventory, there's plenty of forms. There's, can I do photos and have everybody sign off on it? Sure. Videos, not so much, because I don't know how much I'm covering on a video, and I don't know whether if I'm one party or other, I'm gonna sign off on that video, but pictures are fine. An inventory is essential. If there's financing, you're gonna have to do a separate inventory, because the lenders don't like to lend on couches and spoons and knives and forks. But always get in the habit from day one. I gotta have it written down and signed by both parties. Is it tedious? Yes. Will most listing agents provide you with one? Probably not. What's the best way to make sure if it's turnkey or it's furnished or it's partially furnished, or I just want the 80-inch plasma that's sitting over the fireplace? It's got to be written down and agreed to by both parties, because it's not guaranteed by this contract. The neighbor contract has a much broader definition of real property and personal property items that are included if they're there. The FAR contract is quite sparse. Okay. Can you
So
find
you would just write C inventory list or something?
per an inventory agreed to by buyer and seller within 3 days of the effective date, anything like that. Do you see the microwave in there? Let's see the microwave. So there's a lot of things in that are not included in this contract. And if you want to make sure, again, we're all going back to our relationship with our customer, right?
Quick question, so if it's like a microwave drawer, like the Sharp,
If
That's
it's built in and it's
Yeah.
attached to the wall, it's a fixture.
but you're meaning
But what
like
about if it's
countertop,
sitting on the counter
Then you would have to.
and you don't include it?
Okay,
And again, what about the refrigerator in the garage? The seller wants to take that with them. It's included in here as personal property. They finally, a couple of years ago, added the S's like we've had in Neighbor for quite a while. So anything with an S on it means everything, even if there's multiples. So be careful here. I mean, if I only spend time today on the first 25 lines of this contract, they're so important. You got to get the seller right. You got to find out how the buyer wants to take title, and you have to decide what the seller is going to convey and what the buyer is expecting when you do that walkthrough inspection. There's plenty of sources for drama. right there. And it's all, again, it's all about your relationship with your customer. Go ahead.
But most buyers want their, under their name, right?
Then what?
Under their name, the buyer's gonna put their name.
Depends. You know, it probably makes sense to take title in a trust right now, because if it's in a trust, it doesn't have to go to probate. Maybe they don't have one set up, maybe they do. Again, I think that's a question. If the buyer doesn't know, maybe the buyer wants to find out. Can you put it in a individual name and later assign it? Yes, there's a paragraph in this contract that allows you to do that. Okay. So I'm gonna move on with the idea that everybody promises me that they understand that this business of what inventory is conveying at closing is one of the cornerstones of your relationship with your company. Okay. All right, so I'll got plenty of time to get through at least the financing part of it. So obviously purchase price. I'm not a fan of checks. You know, from your real estate school, you have one business day, send the check to the
Yeah.
escrow agent. The escrow agent has two more to
Yeah,
deposit.
that's just.
We don't hold escrow. So it has to be in somebody's hands within one business day if you're going to use a check. So what do I recommend? 3 days after the effective date, wire it to the escrow agent's name. The escrow agent is generally the closing agent, but it doesn't have to be. If the buyer doesn't know who they're going to work with, or the seller hasn't told them who their designated escrow agent is, then something has to be in there. The law says there was so much tomfoolery with escrow agents back in the 2005, 6, 7 days that the state came out and said, no, you have to name a legitimate person to hold the deposit. And we have to be able to verify that person is real and that they're holding that deposit. So it should be, hopefully, if you're letting the seller pay for title, if the seller in the MLS will probably tell you who the closing agent is, and you probably just put that in there. If your buyer is going to select the title agent and pay for the title, then the buyer's escrow or buyer's closing agent goes on 33 to 35. It can't be TBD, or we'll think about it later. If you ever got into any type of legal wrangling with this contract and that was blank, there's some liability there.
So, once you have the title company part of the contract and both parties sign it, does that make automatically the title company the closing agent? Okay.
Well, not necessarily. You can always designate the closing agent or change to the closing agent with an addendum to the contract.
Oh, okay.
It's not a big deal. But that person's going to hold the money. So if you decide to work with somebody else, you have to make arrangements to name the new person and for them to transfer the money prior to closing.
The closing agent is title company.
Attorney or title
Yeah.
company.
Okay, and usually the buyer chooses here in Collier.
The buyer in Collier County picks and pays for title. In this contract, if there's a checkbox, is the seller going to pick and pay, or is the buyer going to pick and pay? So, we aren't there yet, but it's my experience that the buyer is always better off being represented by their attorney or title company, because if they're not, then you always run the risk of the buyer not really being in control of the closing. Who's doing the municipal lien search? Who's doing the title work? If that's all an advocate for the seller, the buyer could be, and a lot of buyers say, well, I'll save $2,500 or $3,000. I don't have to pay for title. But what happens if something goes wrong? Or the municipal lien search doesn't come back, or it doesn't come back correctly? I think that it's worth the money. And if in this day and age, there's a little room for negotiations in contracts. So one way you can do it is a price. The other way you can do it is to say, seller to credit buyer, $3,000 at closing toward their closing costs of prepaids. There's a little room, there's a little flexibility in this market that didn't exist a couple of years ago, that now you can say, okay, I could have a lower purchase price, or I could take a credit from the seller to offset some of my costs. And if I'm financing, that could be a big deal, because now I'm spreading those closing costs over 30 years. I'm not incurring them, I'm getting the credit for it. I'm not having to come up with the cash right up front, so. In the bar contract, the idea of an additional deposit is fine if it's a financial thing where the buyer, is gonna put down 50,000, they only wanna put down 5,000 and they'll do the other 45. However, what in the bar contract is the buyer liable for, no matter what, if they default? 50, 45 and 5. Right? It's not in the neighbor contract. It's a good practice to put down a modest deposit of $5,000 and follow it after the due diligence period with the larger deposit, because if all else fails and the buyer wants to walk away, the only remedy for the seller is deposits made to date. In this contract, all deposits are at risk from day one. Pretty much of a big deal. The time of the essence and the deposit handling, risk of deposits is much different between the two contracts. We'll talk a little bit about line 45. I would say out of the couple hundred contracts I look at every month, I would say 6 of them have an expired time for acceptance when the sellers finally signed them or the counters are done back and forth. What happens if the seller signs this offer after the period that you put in there? Do you have a contract? Can I take that to my friendly local attorney because I'm not happy with the deal? I'm not happy with the seller. I'm not happy with the way I'm treated. And I take that to the attorney, and what's the first thing they're going to say is, you don't have a contract. See you later. So what's a couple things to say in there? Number one, I have people come in and go, the buyer's really anxious. He wants the seller to sign by 5 o'clock this afternoon, and it's 11:30. Is that a good idea? No, I don't think so. You want another thing that you want to establish when you're talking to the listing agent before you write this contract is how long does the seller need to respond? Maybe they're out of town, maybe they're elderly, maybe they need to talk to the son or daughter, whatever. But it's always a good idea to find out how long a reasonable response period is and put it in there, maybe even a little longer. Short response times can create liability for your buyer, because if the seller doesn't respond and nobody notices it, except broker Jeff, when he looks at your contract and sends you a note saying, I think you might have a little problem here. So make sure you put time in there, give it time. All right. And again, the effective date of contract shall be the date when the last one of the buyer seller is signed or initialed or delivered this offer. A couple other things here to talk about. Acceptance and delivery. Okay. Delivery means the seller or buyer has signed the offer and send it back by email, hand delivery, FedEx, however it comes back, it has to be delivered to the other side for the contract to be binding. In the frenzy of the last couple of years, the seller could counter a buyer's offer. The buyer's thinking about it. Okay, yeah, okay. In the meantime, another higher offer comes into the seller. The seller says, I don't have the contract back approved from the buyer, therefore I'm rescinding my counter offer and I'm going to take this other offer. Want to talk about drama? When you talk about I accepted your offer, well, but you didn't send it back to me before this other offer came in. Accepted and delivered. Don't dawdle around. If the buyer sends it to you signed, get it over to the other side. Don't say, well, I'll wait till I get back to the office when I can scan this and I can doodle around with it. Make sure you accept and deliver the contract as quickly as you possibly can. Again, these are all things that if you work at it, these are all things you're working for a buyer or seller or a customer, and you're acting in their best interest. And the best interest you have is to get that signed deal consummated back to the other side inside of this time frame. And does it happen every time? No. And does it happen in a market, even in this market, where you can have multiple offers and another offer could come in before the offer you're negotiating is accepted? Absolutely. How does that make you look in the eyes of your customer if they lose the deal? What's the chances that they're going to work with you in the future? Closing date, again, is time of the essence, and we talk a little bit about closing dates here. Look, closing on a Friday is like playing Russian roulette. How many bullets are in the chamber? What's the odds that the lender doesn't quite get the FedEx package out on Thursday night in time for the lender to fund?
Great.
So why close on a Friday? How many times has the moving van been there and the buyer's ready to move and the lender doesn't get the package out, or you find a last minute condition? Close on a Wednesday. Don't close on a Monday. When do all the problems come into the title companies and everything? They come in over the weekend. Close on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, maybe a Thursday, but give yourself some time. Give yourself some leeway that if something goes wrong, you know, you're not dealing with a buyer or seller waiting over the weekend for their money, or a buyer with a moving van, you know, sitting idle, waiting for the closing to occur. When do closings occur? When the closing occurs, when the closing agent says we're closed. The seller can say, I don't have the money in my account yet. Too bad, so sad. Closing agent is the closing agent, whether it's an attorney or a title company. When they've received all the necessary funds and signatures, you're closed. That's when keys, fobs, garage codes, gate codes change hands. And if you have a bulky seller that says, I don't have the money in my account yet, I'm not giving up possession, explain to them that they need to contact their friendly real estate attorney and make sure that's a good decision on their part. We could talk a little later on about force majeure and risk of loss, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that now. There's a whole segment of these contracts that deal with hurricanes and pandemics and that sort of thing. On 73, if there's a lease involved, the buyer has a right to get a copy of that lease and to look at it and to decide whether they want to move forward with the contract. If it's an investment property and there's Airbnb or HomeAway or whatever involved, understand that generally you need a real estate attorney to figure it all out. Why? Because I can't just transfer my HomeAway account to Jordas. I can't just say, hey, Jordas, here's my account coming to you, baby. No, all of those commitments and all those funds and all those deposits and refunds and everything are staying with Jordas until those rentals are done. The attorney will write language that says, when Jordas gets that money in, he sends it to me because I'm the rightful owner. But remember, if there's the vacation rental scenario in there and there's electronic funds moving around, they don't automatically transfer to the buyer at closing. So if you've got, and you're looking at an investment property, the buyer says, I want to rent this out. The seller says, oh, I already have these rentals. Make sure you get somebody that can sort all that out, or you're really going to have difficulty.
Is that something the title company would do, or is that an additional attorney?
That someone has to write the agreement. I don't know. I think title agents are great, but if there's a complexity where a separate agreement between the parties has to be drawn up. Generally, a title company has an attorney. In Florida, they have to have an attorney representation. Will they allow you to use that attorney to do an escrow agreement or a special agreement with rentals and all that? Just be careful with that. There's the other thing that you see happening is that the seller is getting ready to sell and they say, okay, I'm going to let my cousin come in and I'm going to let my third uncle come in and I'm not going to charge them very much. And so now you're inheriting a bunch of below market leases that don't make sense to you. So this is where assignability in paragraph 7 comes. May assign and therefore be released from further liability under this contract. There are very few sellers that will allow you to check that box. But checking the next box says, okay, if I decide I want to take title in a different form, or I decide I want to add a buyer to the contract because of loan guarantees or whatever, I can do that. If I check box C or the third box on 85, I have to have permission from the seller to do anything. And, you know, in land, we're starting to see land contracts come through that there's some assignments going on where a buyer makes a contract for a certain amount, and then all of a sudden someone comes along and says, I'll pay you more for that. Now the buyer could assign the contract, but that's mainly in land deals, and it's some in Lehigh and the estates are happening, but for a while there was a tremendous amount of assignments going on. So now we're going to come to one of the most complicated parts of the contract. I'm going to probably postpone that because I want to show you the NABOR financing and financing contingency side by side with the FAR. They're very different. They're very difficult to, I've got a little flow chart to show you both of them, but you have to understand that timeliness of these dates in this contract are all about default and all about your buyer not, you know, meeting the needs of their financing. So I'm going to skip that. In the future date, we're going to show you side by side what it means in the NABOR contract and the FAR contract. I do want to talk about inspection items in this last few minutes we have. So if we go over to 136. Okay, so one of the things that I think it's really important for you to do is, if you've got the seller, there's plenty of little software utilities out there. I think our latest venture title has an app. There you can Google seller net sheet. There's all kinds of little utilities out there on the internet that you can get. But basically what this does is you're on your listing appointment, and you're talking to the seller about you're coming to a meeting of the minds about the price. And what does the seller want to know? Not what price they're going to sell it for. How much is in my pocket when I'm all done with this? And if you have that information when you're making your listing presentation, you're going to set yourself aside from an awful lot of other people and then you're going to avoid discussions about those costs that are applicable to the seller and those costs are applicable to the buyer. This is something I said?
I desperately want to stay.
Just kidding.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Have a good day. So a seller net sheet will cover all of these charges in here. And so depending upon which box is checked, assuming the seller is paying for title insurance, then you have the seller having to pay doc stamps, owner's policy and charges, title search charges, and lien search. There's oftentimes the seller doesn't understand what their costs are, right? So in these little seller net sheet utilities, if there's a mortgage involved, it'll ask you when the transaction occurred and what the mortgage is and what the rate is, and it will actually calculate an estimated payoff of the loan and give the seller an idea of how much money is going to be in their pocket when they close. Now, obviously, every time that price changes up or down, it's going to affect their net, but you want to let them know that you understand the reason that they're selling is because they want to move on and do something else, and how much am I going to have in my pocket at the closing table. And it's really, you know, I think it sets you apart as being somebody that's concerned, understands the situation, and can give the seller the bottom line. All right. So right below on 143, right below that is the heart of the repair and inspection process in the FAR contract. It's a little innocuous looking paragraph there, but in the FAR contract, we break repairs down into 3 buckets. It's like 3 separate buckets on the table here. One of them's general repairs, the other one's wood destroying organisms, the third one is permits. All right, there are 3 buckets, and this amount is going to go into that bucket. So it defaults to 1.5% if you leave it blank. Again, I think you know that broker Jeff's not a fan of blanks. I don't know whether you missed it or whether you thought 1.5% was enough. If it depended on the price of the house, the condition of the house, put something in there. If it's a $300,000 house, that's $4,500. Will that cover major repairs to an air conditioner or no, it won't. Put $5,000 or $10,000 in there. You can always negotiate that. But if you leave it to 1.5 and the repairs that your inspector finds and you request are more than that amount, the seller could say, too bad, so sad, I'm only going to repair what you've given me in this limit. So that the limit's important. It's important to have that discussion with your buyer as to, you know, what's going on. Obviously, I think 1.5% is generally enough to tent a house if it's got termites, but make sure that if based on the price of the property, that's enough. Open permits can cost a lot of money to close. So 1.5%, you know, again, if you're in a condo,
What's that?
or an HOA, a villa or something like that, not probably going to have a huge problem with permits, other than maybe the seller has done a complete upgrade on the property. Did you pull permits for this? Permits? Anyhow,
Reset the three, I'm just, I know, I got destroying organisms.
wood destroying organisms is basically any termites or infestation.
Just the three buckets,
Now, there's a bucket for general repairs,
general affairs. that's-
bucket for wood destroying organisms, and there are 3 lines in this contract.
So can I ask you a quick question? If you don't mind, please.
So what type of percentage would you put, let's just say a house, a home is 500,000? What amount would you put?
Well, you got 7,500 on a $500,000 house is the 1.5%.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
if it's a reasonably new house, good condition, probably okay. If you're walking around the house when you're doing the showing, the air conditioner's all rusty and it comes on and goes, bang. Possible problem. Make sure you cover yourself. If you put in $10,000 in there on a $500,000 house, the seller can come back and say, I'm not giving you that much. But if you don't put it in and your repair request exceeds that amount, that the buyer's going to have to make a decision as to what the seller's going to repair. Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. The other part of that paragraph there, starting on 150, is called the seller's maintenance obligation. And it's one of the most important parts of the contract. The seller has to maintain the property in the condition it was in at the time you went to contract up to and including closing. All right. So the seller can't shut the irrigation off because it costs a lot. The seller can't turn his air conditioner up to 89 because he doesn't want to pay the utility bill. Okay. The seller has to maintain that property in the condition it was in, and you have the right at your walkthrough inspection, which I think is probably one of the most important parts of the contract. You have the right when you're doing that walkthrough to verify that that property is in the condition it was in when you went to contract. And if not, you have the right to ask the seller escrow up to 125% of the estimated repair costs or resolution costs, which is not a cap on what they have to owe, but you do have the right to say, we're going to escrow $10,000 or whatever, and we're going to do this, and as your vendor or whatever completes the process, they can submit to the escrow agent and get paid. So remember that forget the contract, forget the inspections and all that, the seller still is under obligation to maintain the property in the condition that it was in. So we talked a little bit about the other day, we don't see it too much anymore because I've kind of been on the warpath about it. Please don't let your buyer waive inspections. It's the lunatic fringe. An inspection, you know, even for a home, $500, $600, $700. If they say, oh, it looks good to me, and they move in and the air conditioner cuts out the next day and the hot water heater blows up and there's 3 leaks in the roof, who are they going to call?
Yeah.
And what are you going to say? So we have a waiver that we ask the buyer to sign. If the buyer says, I don't care what you're telling me, I'm not inspecting. Sign this waiver, releasing Keller Williams, its agents and assigns from any liability of stuff you're going to find. The worst conversation I had was with a builder, licensed contractor. He didn't inspect, didn't need to. Now he's got a leak in the air conditioner and mold. And he wants to know what we're going to do about it. Well, that's when we started the buyer's notice. That's like, what we're going to do is you waive. And the other thing that happens when you waive inspections is When can the buyer go in the house? Can the buyer go in and measure for curtains? No, the buyer can go in the house at the walkthrough inspection. That's it. Now, suppose when I wrote the contract, I did my last showing, it's nice and cool, look good. Then I go into the walkthrough and it's kind of musty and moldy in there. It doesn't smell very good. How can I prove that the sellers, I don't have an inspection to say the air conditioner was good or bad. How can I prove that the seller's maintenance obligation was? You can't. Please, even if you got to say, look, I'll foot that bill or I'll split it with you at closing, whatever. An inspection is the only thing you have that's a baseline for your buyer to know what the condition of that house is before they take possession of it. End of soapbox. At the top of the next page, we're talking about the costs that are paid by the buyer. So that's chapter number 2, buyer net sheet. What's the biggest shock to a buyer when they see how much cash they have to come up with at closing? It's a shock. Oftentimes they have to pay a year of insurance. They have all the loan costs. They have, if they're doing a loan, there's all kinds of things. Maybe it's a capital contribution fee, maybe whatever it is, it's going to be a shock between your deposits and the escrows and everything that you're going to have to pay to come up with at closing. It's a shock. And I don't think people, especially if they're new buyers, I don't think they realize what the closing costs are. I don't think they realize, and reading this doesn't give them any magnitude of error. So somebody's like buying a $350,000 house. Okay, well you have 65,000 at closing. 65,000. Where's that come from? Well, it's your deposit, your insurance for a year, your taxes, all that stuff comes in there. And like, oh, I had no idea. It might even be a good idea to have them look at the net sheet before you send the contract over, right? Make sure that that's a financial decision that they can afford to make. It's amazing sometimes when buyers, especially, they're coming into the area, they don't realize flood insurance, a lot of, oh, by the way, it's very expensive and affect the cost of owning that property. Do a buyer net sheet early on in the process. It's going to save you a lot of surprises and why didn't you tell me? All right. So I want to skip a couple of these things here. I'll go briefly. Title evidence, again, that's the whoever selects the closing agent has to provide title evidence and title insurance. And there's reference here to the municipal lien search. But 164 and 188 are where your buyer is going to decide whether they're going to designate the closing agent and pay for title or whether the seller is going to do it. In Lee County, it's typical that the seller picks and pays. In Collier County, it's typical that the buyer picks and pays. I will submit to you that buyer picking and paying is the best possible solution for the buyer. If it's a reputable title company or attorney, probably doesn't make that much difference. But if something goes wrong, I had a listing agent begged me to use the seller's title company one time, and it was a friend of his as a favor. I'm like, okay. So the next year, the buyer got the tax bill, and there was 2 years of taxes on there. And he called and said, "What's up with this?" I said, "Well, the title agent missed it." Was he in business when we called him?
No.
Murphy's Law, alive and well. Just remember that when we talk about assessments on 204, these are special assessments. They're municipal assessments only. Sewer, water, road, they have nothing to do with a condo assessment or an HOA assessment for improvements or insurance or repairs. So just understand that paragraph F has to do with, and when you get up into the Cape, there's a lot of sewer and water assessments as they move north with them, and sometimes in Bonita. But these are strictly special assessments by municipal bodies. All right, I'm going to skip over the disclosures. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking to you about. Thanks for coming. I'll spend a few minutes talking to you about the repair process, then we'll quit for the day. All right, so Obviously, there's an inspection period similar to any of the inspection periods. It defaults to 15 days. Again, I don't think you should take less than 10. Because you have to hire the inspector, you have to go through getting some quotes, you have to figure out, you know, what you're doing here. Now, remember, this isn't an as-is contract. It's like we're in this contract. We've allocated the amounts that the seller's willing to pay to bring the house up to speed. And now we're into general property inspection and repair, okay? Now, you'll notice in here, and you can take time reading this on your own, there's very clear definition of what's defective and what's cosmetic and what the buyer could ask for and what the seller could say, sorry, that's cosmetic, that's normal wear and tear. I don't have to do anything about that. That's the difference in essence between the as-is contract and the regular contract, is we have definition and we have clarity and we have language in here that protects the buyer, that a licensed contractor has to be done to do the repairs, receipts have to be provided in this contract. So it's protecting the buyer that the seller agreeing to make the repairs does them in a legitimate way with appropriately licensed contractors. In the as-is contract, it could be my Uncle Freddie, who used to be a contractor 20 years ago, and he's going to handle all this for me. And that's nothing I can do about it as a buyer. So careful with that. So basically the seller is obligated to I've got to notify him in writing by the end of the inspection period. Be careful, because in NABOR, you get 5 days after the end of the inspection period to submit your request. In this contract, your request has to be submitted by the end of the inspection period. And how is it going to be submitted? Copy of the inspection report, email, or a list of here are the things that we consider to be defective, and here's the things we'd like you to address. The seller is obligated to address them if they meet the definition of defective up to what you put in the general property repair bucket. Can the seller elect to do it all? Sure. Can the seller say, the cap is 10,000, it's 12, you've asked me for $12,000 worth of repairs. Which ones do you want? So be careful with that. That's why you should have an intelligent discussion based on what you see as if it's an older home, the appliances are older, the hot water tank looks like it's been there a while, the air conditioner is a little rusty when you walk around the outside. You know, these are all things that could involve repair money. Okay, so organized process, defined as to who can do the repairs, and there's a little bit of a back and forth in here that if I asked you for a credit, the seller can get their own credit. If we can't agree, we can get a third person, split the cost of them, and that third person is the tiebreaker. So there's even a little language down here on 316 and down where we can kind of go back and forth.
So if we're representing a buyer, and we want them to conduct inspections, are they gonna have to pay for each one of those inspections out of pocket, or is that paid at the closing table?
No, the inspectors are paid out of pocket at the time they do the inspection. So you can, a general inspection, then there could be radon, could be mold, all those tests that come out of pocket from the buyer at the time they're done.
Right, because if they don't make it to closing, right, the inspector has to be paid.
I mean, if it's a financial issue, maybe you can offer to split it with them, or get paid back in closing. But generally, the buyer is you're not saying use this inspector, you're saying here's 2 or 3 inspectors, pick the one you want. So they're making an independent decision of who they're going to hire. You're not steering them into one inspection company or another, because you don't want there to be a problem and they say, well, Jeff told me to use this inspector. So you don't want to get in that position. You always want to give them at least 1 or 2 so they can make a decision. And a lot of times they'll go online and pick somebody you've never heard of before, but that's their choice. Similar with WDO, similar with permits. Now understand that closing out the building permits can be difficult, and also understand that if I'm a seller and I've hired somebody to put in a new air conditioner and they had to pull a permit, I'm assuming that I hired that contractor and that they pulled the permit and they finalized it out and I don't have to worry about it. But That's not always the case. That's why you'll see permits generally in the county expire every 6 months. The contractor forgets to close the permit out and get the CO. They may have done the work perfectly, but they didn't bother to complete it. Then you gotta pull a new permit. If there's a lot of updates, generally updates are okay if they're countertops and flooring and things like that. But if they involve electrical or plumbing, ripping out windows, changing drywall, those are all things that are permitted activities. So if you walk into a place and the place has been gutted and restored, and yes, you can go online and look to see if there's a permit, but you can't always conclusively find the permit. The inspector can look at it for you and say, I don't see any permits for any of this. Those are red flags to say, okay, if I don't ask the seller to focus on this and do something now, my buyer is going to inherit it the day they sign the closing papers. And they can't say, I didn't know anything about it. He did it. No, it doesn't work. Ownership goes for open expired permits, code violations. Ownership goes with the closing at the closing date. Okay.
Jeff, just a quick question first. So if there's inspection, repairs are done, is it my job to call to make sure that's closed off, like a week later or whenever?
Inspection repairs generally in this contract, you're entitled to receipts. That the contractor's finished it and here's the amount and all that. The neighbor contract's a little bit silent to receipts, but if you're the listing agent, why not? Have the repairs done legitimately. Here's the receipt for them. So, but permits can be complicated. If you're walking through the house, I don't want to run too long here, but if you're walking through the house and the lanai is enclosed and there's a step down like this, front row, an unpermitted, because that's a flood insurance problem, right? I got my main floor here and I got my lanai floor here. If it's all level, done, chances are the permit's been full. If you go in the condos in Pelican Bay, almost every one of those lanais has been blown out, extended. Did they do a permit? Probably not. So be careful with that. We'll finish with the discussion of the walkthrough. The walkthrough is the most important, one of the most important parts of the contract. Why? Because that's your buyer's chance to verify that everything's there, that the repairs have been done properly, and that the place is habitable. I don't open the garage and go, they forgot to do it, I'll just accumulated junk in the garage. Or they were supposed to repair the leak under the sink. So I think it's a great idea to schedule the inspector that did the original inspection to come back with you during the walkthrough. It's usually $100, maybe a couple $100, and they can say, that's not right. A little war story. I was working with a couple buying a second floor condo, and we went in and there was a closet, almost like a storage closet, right as you walked in. And the inspector noted that there was some moisture stains around the baseboard and kind of wasn't wet or anything. So we noted that. We gave them the inspection report. They went along with some caulking and kind of touch up painted the baseboard. And we had the inspector with us, and she says, wait a minute. She goes around the corner into the master bath and turns the shower on. The water starts pouring out because the shower pan's leaking. Would I have caught that? Oh, it's good to be caught, right? No problem.
So just, so you hire a totally different inspector?
No, we just, the person that, she suspected there was a problem when she first said it, but it was testing dry. So when she saw that it was kind of slipped over and caulked, she said, wait a minute, the bathroom's right, let me try this. So we ended up getting them to give us a $10,000 credit for all new shower pan, plumber, the whole thing. Because we had the right of asking, in this contract, you can ask for 125% of the estimated cost, and the neighbor contract 200%. So rather than fool it, they just gave us a credit. So what would have happened if we hadn't done that? There would have eventually been a leak, or the second floor, the leak would have gone, it would have been ugly, right? So was bringing that inspector back and paying her $100, $200 worth it? Absolutely. The last thing I'll tell you is you do not want to be the person that does that inspection. Can you be there? Yes. Do you want to be the buyer calls you and says, gee, Jeff, I can't make it down my flight. I couldn't get a flight. why don't you go and do that inspection for me? Never. Your E&O insurance that you get, that you pay for every month that covers you, will not cover you acting as the source of the final the walkthrough inspection. You know, if you miss a washer dryer or they've swapped the washer dryer out for a scratch and dent model and you don't get it, who's responsible? And if you try to come to broker Jeff and say, you know, this is gonna cost me $5,000, I want my E&O to cover it, the E&O will go, sorry. So don't do it. Bring a neighbor, bring the inspector. You know, it's okay for you to be there, but it's not okay for you to be the authority that signs off on.
They suggest bringing like a neighbor, and have them do it.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
I'm not a fan of the FaceTime because if you miss something, you're still the one that's showing them all around the unit. So, try not to be that person. Okay, I think we put a pretty good dent in this contract. We'll go deeper, but, thanks for your time.
Thank
You for 5 minutes. Oh, by the way, how many new agents do we have in the room? Oh, I don't see any. All right, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.